Let's sing a song, yeah?
Come yum. Come yum.
Hello there.
This is part 2 of my full review of all the live-action Star Wars Disney Plus shows. If you would like to hear my thoughts on the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and Kenobi, go check it out. But if you only want to hear my thoughts on the newer stuff, just stick around.
Okay.
For now, I will compare Andor to other Disney Star Wars shows I've reviewed by using food as my analogy. So I would describe watching the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian to be like having a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Nothing amazing, but it tastes good and you would rather have it than not, even if it doesn't have the bread you like. Book of Boba Fett is like tofu with too much salt. It's bland and it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. It's something that you would more than likely not eat unless you were super hungry and there was nothing else to eat. Kenobi is like all Doritos. You think you'll like it, but it stabs into your gums. It's hard to swallow and you regret having it. Also, it ruins the taste of not only normal Doritos, but other chips as well for a few months. But Andor, on the other hand, is like a roll of good sushi. You didn't think you would like it, but once you try it, you're hooked on the combination of flavors, and you want more. You don't think it's the best thing ever, but you're happy you had it. Andor has very little Star Wars in it. No lightsabers, no force, or anything mystical. It's just about a character named Andor. The guy from the Star Wars movie you forgot you saw, Rogue One. The stakes of the story are small and self-contained. So just like with the rice and sushi, the main ingredient is bland, but the story and characters make up the meat. Sure, I didn't think I would like them just like with raw fish, but I did. The plot was the cucumber. By itself, it's nothing special, but when you mix it all in with everything else, it makes something amazing. I could go on and on with this analogy, but I think you understand that it's a show I like even though I thought I wouldn't. It has 12 episodes in full, which is twice that of Kenobi, but the effects look so much better. At least I can tell they're not on a set. I mean, the effects and sets should look good because this show has a budget of $15 to $20 million an episode. To put that into perspective, Repo the Genetic Opera had a budget of $8.5 million, and that was a movie that came out in 2008. Even if we adjust for inflation, that's only about $11.87 million in today's money. Now, there is one problem that I do have with this show. It doesn't feel like Star Wars. Sure, there's the Empire and a few Star Wars aliens that are mostly in the background, but with no force or lightsabers or even a Dune dragon, it's not a space fantasy. It's a sci-fi. Also, maybe it's just me getting old, but I miss it when sci-fis looked different from one another. Terminator looked different from Star Trek, which looked different from Blade Runner. Speaking of Blade Runner, look at this scene from Andor and tell me it doesn't look like it's out of Blade Runner. So yes, Andor is a good show, just not a good Star Wars show. It could have been set in the Star Trek universe and not much would change. It amazes me that the best Disney Star Wars movie was Rogue One, and now Andor is the best Disney Plus Star Wars show. It's almost as if Disney doesn't know what they are doing with Star Wars or something. I swear the less Star Wars Disney uses, the better. No one, and I mean no one, was asking for an Andor show, but we got it, and I'm glad we did. The show was filmed on site in the UK, and the British accents just fit so well in the show. Okay, I take it back. There's a few things in this show that do feel like Star Wars. Anyways, without further ado, let's review the first episode of Andor. Episode 1 starts with Andor on this very rainy planet. At first I thought it was Corellia, but nope, it's Morlania. He's looking for his sister in a brothel. This is a kid show, right? Also, no, her working in a brothel doesn't add anything to the story. Oh, never mind. This show is rated TV-14. Okay, Jar Jr. can watch this show once he's out of juvie. Unfortunately for Andor, he doesn't find her, so he leaves. But 2 security guards start following him because they think he looks sus. Now, isn't it amazing that these security guards are more competent than the entire Empire was in Kenobi? Unlike that show, everyone isn't a dumbass in Andor. Keep in mind, Andor isn't a master Jedi who has his face plastered all over the place, but he does look sus and the guards ask him for his ID. Andor knocks one of them down, grabs the other guard's gun, and after struggling for a bit, he manages to take it. In Kenobi, they would have just handed the gun to him, or missed every shot as they got closer to him so he could cut them down with his lightsaber. Okay, I already did a full review of Kenobi in my last video, so I'm gonna stop making comparisons to it, because if I did that, we would be here all day. Now Andor does have the gun, but the other guard is dead from falling down. Wow, that's all it took to kill him? Well, I guess grown men do die from falling sometimes, so it's not a plot problem. Andor points the gun at the other guard who begs for his life. He does a really shit job at it. He tells Andor to give him the gun back. He'll still arrest him, but he'll put in a good word and tell the court that the other guard only died from slipping. Unsurprisingly, this doesn't work on the guy who's holding him at gunpoint. If I was in this guard's shoes, I would have asked Andor to walk away with the gun, and that I would also say in my report that it was too dark for me to see who jumped me. Now, yes, the guard is being stupid, but he's killed for his stupidity, which is something that would never happen in Kenobi, because if it did, all the characters would be dead. Andor leaves the planet, and to be honest, can you really blame him? He lands on Ferrix. We see a droid that vaguely looks like R2, but unlike R2, it can talk. A dog alien tries to pee on it, and the droid shocks the dog. Wow, Marvel humor that is actually funny.
In return for your service, please accept these gifts. As is tradition, the protectors of our world are bestowed with great feasts. Giant goats! Oh, look at that!
The droid comes across Andor, who's dreaming about himself and his sister when they were kids, living on a grass planet, until one day a ship crashed near their village. We get a funny scene where Andor tells the droid to act like it's never seen him before, but it needs more power in order to lie.
Listen to me, it's important. I know it takes a lot of energy, but can you make a lie for me?
I can't lie. I have adequate power reserves.
Don't tell anybody you saw me. Don't tell anybody you know where I am.
That's 2 lies.
Let's have both.
I will have to recharge at home.
Take your time on the way back.
And this keeps making more and more lies, meaning the droid needs more and more power. Not gonna lie, it did make me laugh a little. Andor comes across his co-worker friend, and he tells his friend that he needs him to be his alibi. We cut to a security station where an officer tells his boss about the 2 men who were killed. He seems really upset about his co-workers being killed, but his boss couldn't give less of a bantha fodder. They talk about Andor and describe him as a human with, slightly dark features. Okay, there's aliens in this world. This is not the series to interject talking points about law enforcement racism. Yes, this show is mostly good, but you can tell which parts Kathleen Kennedy added in. But I won't lie, the boss saying we shouldn't report the crime so the crime rate stays low is good commentary. Andor tries to sell scrap metal to a hot girl mechanic so he can get off this planet. She has a boyfriend, but Andor also seems to be into her. Remember that my wife's boyfriend meme? Yeah, that was a funny meme. Andor tells him he doesn't need to worry because she's stronger than both of them, and he says back, "I'm tired of hearing that." You and most people watching modern TV shows and movies, my friend. The security guy learns about a ship with no ID, and he thinks it might belong to the same guy who killed those 2 men. Okay, wow. Just wow. I promise this is the last time I'll bring up Kenobi. Okay, we both know I'm not gonna keep that promise. But if any officer in that show was half as competent as this guy, Kenobi would have been caught like 15 different times. Andor is ambushed by this guy he scammed who brought up, I think that's a Cortarian, but I'm not sure, as muscle, so Andor doesn't run away. Andor gets out of this situation by telling the alien guy that he can't believe that he's working for a guy who paid him? Okay, trust me, this is a good show, for the most part, but there are some stupid scenes. You could cut this out and nothing would change. I guess that scene was written by one of the writers for Kenobi. The hot mechanic lady leaves to meet with some rebels. She tells her boyfriend she's just going out to get some smokes, but he thinks she's being sus, and he follows her. As he's following her, he gets knocked over by some guys carrying crate boxes and loses her. Okay, that was weird and a little pointless. Even in Andor, super convenient things happen for the plot to move forward. Andor asks this old guy with some alien dogs if he can borrow his ship again, and the guy tells Andor to fuck off. The episode ends off on a flashback of Andor when he was a kid, going to check out the crashed ship as his sister stays behind. Now, I know it sounds like like I didn't say a lot about a roughly 40-minute long episode, and that's because the pacing is super slow. After I finished watching episode 1, I realized I did have a few problems with it. I was lost on what was happening, and I wasn't entertained at all. I thought the show would go downhill from here, so I stopped watching, but everyone told me it gets better. So I forced myself to keep watching, and I'm glad I did. After all, Breaking Bad episode 1 didn't hook me either. I would like to take a break before I review the rest of the show to tell you why I was convinced to give this show a second chance. Mandalorian, at least the first 2 seasons, was better than Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi. But why? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but I think why The Mandalorian was so good in the first place is because he's not a legacy character like Ben or Boba Fett. He was someone who the fans weren't really coming to see, so the writers had to put effort in to keep people watching. Book of Boba Fett and Kenobi didn't have to be good because people would come to see them no matter what. Andor is a nobody that the fans wouldn't be running to see, so the writers had to put in effort so they would give the show a chance. Okay, now let's get into reviewing episodes 2 and 3 because the first 3 episodes kind of all line up into one big long episode. Not gonna lie, I kind of wish they cut down the first 3 episodes and made it into one episode. But if you want to check out the show for yourself, I would recommend clicking off this video before continuing this review or skipping ahead to my review of Mandalorian Season 3 or Ahsoka. The first thing I noticed was that the opening music was slightly different from episode 1, clearly showing that the tone would be different from the last episode. The pace is quicker because Andor will have to move faster now that the Empire is looking for him. We start with a flashback of Andor trying to keep up with the bigger kids. They are saying something, but I can't understand them and there's no subtitles. I feel like a weeaboo who went to Japan for the first time. They come across this big mining hole, and Andor stares at it with this look on his face that just tells me, oh yeah, this is going to be important to the plot later. We see a guy from Doom with some hammers ringing this bell thing. I won't lie, this bell absolutely looks badass. It's something we haven't seen before in Star Wars, but the fact that this is how the people on this planet tell time is a little silly. Like, that thing looks like it's made out of Beskar, which is extremely expensive. It would be cheaper to have a Big Ben-like clock. Anyways, everyone goes to work, and they also get messages about a Kenari human male that they need to keep an eye out for. Wow, even in the Star Wars universe, you can't escape Amber Alert. Now, Kenari humans are basically the Mexicans of the Star Wars universe. They are just a little darker than white humans. I already complained about the racism between humans in a universe full of non-humans already, but as a white American, I sometimes mistake Mestizo people as being Caucasian. They look basically the same to me, and I don't live in a world full of Hutts, Gungans, Mon Calamaris, Jawas, and hundreds of other different alien races. If I did, I would think all human races looked exactly the same. I would probably mix up my black and Asian friends. In the Star Wars extended universe, the Empire is shown to be alien-phobic, which makes sense because humans are the majority, and they just had a war with the Separatists, who were almost entirely made up of non-human species. Well, other than their leader Count Dooku. Yes, the non-human races are so evil, but only a human could lead them properly. This is why Rogue One should have at least had one alien character on the team. Andor runs home. The droid B2 reads out the Amber Alert, and Andor snaps at his mom for telling two people that he's from Canary, Canary. Now, I have been calling him Andor this whole time, but that's his last name. His first name is Caspian, Cassian. But I'm just gonna call him Andor because I keep accidentally saying Caspian instead of Cassian. Andor meets up with the mechanic lady, whose name is Bix, by the way. Her husband, Tim... yes, that's actually his name, sees them talking and calls the cops. Andor really should have gotten him that Nintendo Switch. Back on Morelia, a female officer reads out Andor's past charges to see if he's the man they are looking for. The officer, who was torn up over the two security guards getting killed, whose name is Cyril Karin, by the way, he meets with Sergeant Linus Mosk, and I'm not gonna lie, he's kind of like a white Kim Jong-un. And I'm not saying that just because he's fat, he also sounds like he smokes a pack of Marlboro cigarettes a day. Also, yes, Kim Jong-un sounds a lot deeper and rougher than you would expect. You might recognize this actor as Commissioner Pete Savage from Batman. Basically, he just tells Cyril to not let an opportunity pass him by, and to give this hunt his all. Andor goes to a hidden compartment on his ship and grabs an NS-9 Starpath unit that he stole from the Empire. Basically, it's something really important, and if he's caught with it, he'll be forced by the Empire to watch Kenobi! And I guess he'll also be executed. We go into another flashback where Andor and the bigger kids find the crashed ship, and it has some yellow smoke coming out of it. Oh man, they must have ripped that bong so good. Now a girl is the leader of the group, and I'm okay with this because she's not a Mary Sue, and her being the leader is done in a way that feels natural. Yep, it's a modern-day female Star Wars character that I don't have a problem with. Hell, probably looks a lot like Hoth right now. The kids get closer, and all the crew seem to be dead, but not from the crash. They all have gas masks on, and yellow skin. They also have the Separatist logos on their uniforms. One of them gets up and shoots the leader girl in the back. The other kids take him out with blow darts, and they rush her back to camp. But Andor stays behind to see if there's any death sticks on the ship. Back in the present, Andor meets with Zan Wan, and he dumps a bunch of exposition about Canary. Zan says that Canary was an abandoned Empire mining planet. A disaster happened, causing toxic gas to spread, killing everyone on the planet. But wait, those guys who crash landed on the planet were part of the Separatist before the rise of the Empire. So what could this all mean? Cyril, along with the officers from Morelia, travel to Ferrix to capture Andor. Isn't it amazing that they care so much about two men who were killed? It's definitely a different side of the Empire we haven't seen before. It's nice to see that they aren't all assholes.
How many assholes we got on this ship anyhow?
Go!
I knew it, I'm surrounded by assholes.
Now, granted, they are more like private police officers, and they're not trained soldiers, but they still work under the Empire. Cyril gives the most Asperger motivational speech of all time. By the way, Twitter, I have Asperger's, so I can say that. We also get a nice scene with some old guy on a commercial flight, talking about what it was like before the Empire came to power. We also see other old people talking about what it was like before the Empire came to power throughout the show. But this is the first time one is focused on. It's good world building in my opinion. We end off the episode with Andor getting ready to protect himself with a K-16 blaster. Well, now it's time to move on to episode 3, and it's where the show finally gets really good. Don't get me wrong, Andor wasn't bad so far, but man has it been slow. The intro music changes once again, and it sounds much more tribal for lack of a better word. We open on a flashback with Andor's adopted mother, B2, and this black guy carrying him away from his home world. Now, we've seen that all the humans on this planet are kids. It's like Lord of the Flies, but
in space.
I think I just thought of a good idea for a movie. We also can tell that the clothes that the kids wear don't really fit them all too well. It's as if they salvaged them from the adults who died during the mining accident. Child Andor, as he's looking through the ship, sees his reflection in a mirror for the first time in years. Apparently, he never looked at his reflection in the water right next to his village. He recalls what his life was like before he was orphaned. Also, we get a cool transition shot where as a kid, Andor hits the mirror and And in the present day, this big Venator-class Star Destroyer that is being scrapped has a big piece fall off, and it looks like Kid Andor was the one who made it fall. This is Andor's day job as an adult. He takes apart old ships that the Republic used to use. They are of course going to be built into new Empire ships. I'm not gonna lie, this is pretty good world building. The old guy from before Luthen lands on the planet and heads to meet up with Andor. By the way, I love this extra jumping in the background. The security team comes out of hyperspace, and in less than a second their ship detaches smaller ships to go down to the planet. Wow, these guys are efficient. We get another awesome transition shot with B2 turning into a newer version of himself, showing us that this is a flashback. It turns out that Andor's soon-to-be adopted mother and her friend sabotaged the ship that crashed on the planet. They plan to scrap it for parts, but they find young Andor breaking everything inside, and this is why I don't have kids. Andor yells at her in Kenari, and she says something that everyone in the audience is thinking. I can't understand him. But believe it or not, Kenari is actually a real language with functional grammar and everything. Like, it's no Elvish or Dothraki, but the fact that they went this far with something that was only in a brief scene is pretty impressive. She decides to take Andor with him because, the kids took out a Republic officer? I'm pretty sure that guy's a separatist. Back in the present, the officers raid Andor's home, and they, oh god, threaten to rip out the droid's power supply! That's kind of an odd threat. I mean, it's not like they're ripping out its motherboard or anything. I'm a robot, so I know this stuff. Ripping out my power supply won't kill me, it will just shut me down. If my power supply is put back in or I get a new one, I'll turn right back on. It's kind of like taking a really long nap. Andor uses a comm and, accidentally gives away his location. He meets up with Luthen and tries to sell him the Starpath unit. But Luthen doesn't seem very interested in the Starpath unit. He seems more interested in the man who stole it, Andor. Luthen tries to convince Andor to join the rebels, and he also says, yo dumbass, don't carry a cell phone on you, the government can track that shit. We also get a pretty good action scene. I really like how Luthen uses the environment to his advantage. I also really like how the townspeople are fighting back against the officers. They take down the street signs so the officers don't know how to navigate. It's a simple yet very effective tactic. Even the Ukrainians have implemented this strategy against the Russians. And doing something like this does not break how the rules work in the Star Wars universe. This is the smartest Star Wars has ever been, at least in terms of live action. It truly is Star Wars, but for adults. Tim gets shot by a cop. Oh no, I cared so much about his character. And the officer who shot him tries to fly away in his attack pod, but his ship seems to have been a bit tangled up, which causes him to crash. Yeah, the people are fighting back in ways that the officers can't pin on them. It's actually really intelligently done. Oh, and one of the officers says the word shit. Oh my god, I feel like such an adult. There was a swear word in Star Wars. The officers are defeated and humiliated as Cassian and Luthen escape from the planet. And yeah, that's how episode 3 ends, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm hooked on the show now. Don't get me wrong, it was a little slow at first, but now it actually got really good. I'm excited to see where it goes from here, so let's check out episode 4. It starts off with Luthen trying to convince Andor to fight against the Empire. Andor of course laughs at this because a fight against the Empire sounds impossible. He also mentions that after spending some time in prison, he was sent to the planet Mimbim to fight, which, by the way, was the same planet Han was fighting on in the movie Solo: A Star Wars Story. Yeah, when you really get down to it, he's kind of like Han. He's a man who really only cares about money until he becomes a revolutionary fighting alongside the rebels. Speaking of money, Luthen offers to pay Andor 200,000 credits. We transition to the planet Coruscant, and we see the Imperial Security Bureau. If you're a big fan of the Star Wars Extended Universe, then you probably have heard about this organization lots of times. In any other Disney Star Wars TV show, I would be nervous about seeing this organization that I've read about for decades, but with this show, I'm cautiously optimistic. Basically, the job of the ISB is to seek out more government control for the Empire. And because of the failure of the private security company on Ferrix, the ISB relieves them of their authority. Oh my god, the ISB is Disney! Luthen gives Andor a down payment of some jewelry. Okay, it's actually a kyber crystal that was apparently made in celebration for a victory against the Rakatans. Is this just an Easter egg, or are those guys canon now? God, Knights of the Old Republic was such a fucking good game. Luthen speaks to the leader of the heist, Vel. She's not really happy with Andor joining the team so late, but after a little convincing from Luthen, she accepts him on the team. Andor meets up with his team and, yeah, we know a lot of these guys are not gonna survive. As Luthen returns home and we see what his day job is like, he runs a store full of Star Wars Easter eggs. Also, Mon Mothma comes into the shop. If you don't remember who she is, she's the only other woman other than Princess Leia from the original Star Wars trilogy. She's pretending to pick up a gift for her husband, but she's really here to get information from Luthen. Just like in TF2, there's spies everywhere. Even her driver could be one. She goes home to her 2 million credit apartment. Her husband tells her about the dinner party he is planning. He has invited Seymour, the bald lady who's always next to Palpatine. By the way, did you know she's actually Force sensitive and knows the true identity of the Emperor? So does this mean shit's about to go down? No, it's just an Easter egg. Cyril, who's now out of a job because of his fuck-up, has to move back in with his mother. Just like me if my YouTube channel starts going downhill. My Patreon is in the description, boys and girls, in case you want to support me. We end off with Andor and his team going over the heist plan to steal a bunch of money from the Empire base. Okay, I know I didn't say that much about this episode, but that's because it's more so set up for the next one. And that episode is also more so set up for the next one after that. So let's move on to episode 5, but I want you to check out the show for yourself, so I will be speeding up my review from here on out. Also, I really suck at talking about things I like. I'm a lot better at making jokes about terrible shows because, well, the script writes itself. Anyways, episode 5 is by far the most nothing episode yet. There's character development, and lots of it, but that doesn't make for a good review. But don't get me wrong, I'm happy it gave us time to connect to the characters and all. But this will be my shortest episode review yet. We start off with Cyril eating some cereal. His mom tells him to get a job already, and that his uncle might be able to help him get one. And yep, that's basically all he does this episode. Okay, let's go over all the characters on Andor's team. There's Nemik, a wide-eyed, young, trusting young man who truly believes in the cause. Yeah, he's for sure gonna die. He's also writing a manifesto. Now, I've only ever read one manifesto, and that was the one by Elliot Rodger, so I bet his manifesto is truly based and red-pilled. There's also Tattoo Guy. He has a lot of tattoos. His name is Skeen, and he's an ex-mercenary who did jail time just like Andor. He's kind of the, Raphael of the group. He's not very trusting of Andor, but I bet he's going to be one of the members who survives. There's Cameron, who kind of looks like a Black Omni-Man. He trains the group, but aside from that, he doesn't do a whole lot. Vel is the no-nonsense leader of the group, who we were introduced to in the last episode. Her girlfriend, Cinta, who I'm sure is the 15th first Disney gay character ever, but she is fiercely loyal to the cause. She cares about it even more so than her relationship. And finally, we're introduced to the most important member of the team, Lieutenant Gorn. He's their man on the inside, a low-ranking Empire officer. He was loyal to the Empire, but one day, they executed a local woman that he fell in love with. And after her passing, he fell in love with the planet she grew up on. So yeah, each person on the team has their own motivations for fighting against the Empire, but they all are understandable and they all make sense. We see Gorn do things like chastise his men for using a holy site as target practice. He ponders over the desecration of this planet, and how the people of this planet, the Eldani, used to gather in large numbers to watch this beautiful meteor shower. Once again, this show is just so good at showing, well, how evil the Empire is and why people would want to fight against them. Some of them are fighting for the people of this planet, others are fighting for revenge, some are even fighting for philosophical reasons, but they all have their reasons for fighting against the Empire. Now, in the first Star Wars movie, New Hope, Luke tells Ben that he hates the Empire. Sure, we as the audience know why the Empire is evil, but why would a normal working Joe hate them? Well, here's our answer. While the team is training to carry out the heist, a TIE fighter flies above them. And despite how many times we've seen these TIE fighters get destroyed, this one is absolutely terrifying. It would be like one singular firebender attacking a group of non-benders. Sure, we've seen these guys get their ass kicked by the main characters lots of times. We forget just how scary one of them is to the average person. If that thing decides to attack them, well, there's nothing they can do. Their blasters won't be able to penetrate its armor. Their plan is to disguise themselves as Imperial troops to infiltrate the base, grab all the credits, and leave on a slow-moving Imperial freighter. But they will use the beautiful meteor shower as cover. What I like about this is, well, the rebels are using the environment of the planet to their advantage, something the much more technologically advanced Empire never took the time to learn about. Oh yeah, and there's also a scene with Mon Mothma and her family. They do not like her. Her husband and daughter completely gain up on her. It's always awkward when the rest of your family politically disagrees with you. Now, in most Star Wars shows, this would be a completely pointless scene, but trust me, this actually leads to something. It's also interesting seeing the upper-class life she has on Coruscant in contrast to the lower-class life Cyril lives on Coruscant. Alright, now we're moving on to Episode 6. Episode 4 and 5 gave us the build-up, so let's see the payoff. One interesting thing about this episode is that we follow the perspectives of many different people. Like this one Empire officer who kind of looks like Robert E. Lee. He tells his family just how dirty and uncivilized the people of this planet are, but he's too fat to put on his own uniform. It really shows just how much the Empire has and how little the people they are oppressing have. The heist begins as the pieces slowly fall into place. Gorn assigns Andor and the other disguised rebels to guard the fat Imperial guy and his family. Our heist crew of course takes this opportunity to lock up the base and use the officer and his family as hostages. At the same time, the lesbian power couple cut off outgoing communications from the base so they can't call for help. Since most of the troopers are outside watching the meteor shower, there are very few men actually guarding the vault. Andor and the rest of the heist crew force them at gunpoint to start loading credits onto the transport. Wow, this plan actually sounds like it was well thought out, and they even waited for the perfect opportunity to execute it. There was no need for something super convenient to happen for the plot to move forward. It's nice, I miss good writing. But while this is all going on, one of the low-ranking officers thinks that something sussy is going on, so he takes a small platoon of men to go check it out. They show up and ask,
What is going on here?
Gorn tries to use his superior rank to get the officer to stand down, but then the fat guy has a heart attack. This causes the guards to start shooting, and we finally get an action scene. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of getting a little bored, but because I was given time to connect with the characters, I actually give a shit when they die. Oh no, Gorn is killed! Oh, and Tamarin as well! Not the cinnamon-skinned lesbian woman!
No! Cinnamon-skinned target lady, no!
Hello, Editing Jar here. This was a mistake on my end. She did get shot, but she didn't die. But luckily, they get on the freighter and they start their escape. Okay, it looks like everybody here is going to survive and oh no! The young trusting guy Nemec just got crushed by a whole bunch of money! TIE fighters start chasing after them, but luckily the meteor shower works as cover, and it even takes out a few of the TIE fighters. They make it to their location, and maybe there's a chance to save Nemec. He's still breathing and a doctor has a look at him and he's dead. And to add insult to injury, Tattoo Guy reveals that his whole revenge story was made up. He was only ever in it for the money. He tells Andor that they should run away together and split the money 50-50. But much like Han Solo, Andor shoots first. At first I was confused as to why Andor shot him, but after thinking it over, it does make sense. If he refused to go along with Skeen, Skeen would have shot him. And if he accepted to go with him, well, there was a very good chance that Skeen would have backstabbed him. Also, his name sounds like Scheme. It's kind of funny that the guy who constantly chastised him for only being in it for the money was actually the greedy one all along. The episode ends with Andor taking the Supreme Gentleman's Manifesto with him, as it was his dying wish. We are halfway through the show, unless of course they make a season 2. If they do, well, then we're halfway through just season 1. And I won't lie, I'm enjoying the show so far, but I feel like episodes 4, 5, and 6 could have been cut down into one really long episode. So far, Andor could easily be just 2 really long episodes. But episode 7 is the first standalone episode, so it doesn't share any of the complaints I had about episodes 1 through 6. And I'm not gonna lie, I think it might be my favorite episode of the show. The episode starts with the ISB responding to the heist that just happened. Now, Andor thought that the Empire wouldn't care at all about this little heist, but it turns out they do care. They care a lot, up to the point that the Emperor himself turns over all executive power to the ISB. To put this in perspective for you, imagine if the police had so much more power that they could search your home without a warrant. Oh wait, the SWAT team can already do that. Imagine if the government could look through your mail. Oh wait, they already do that with our emails. Okay, basically imagine if the police force for the rest of the USA were kind of like the police force in New York City. Okay, there's an example that actually works. But in all seriousness, the ISB gains complete control over the police and the government. They're using the heist that just happened as an excuse to gain complete control. This is how almost every single authoritarian dictatorship gains power. They use small uprisings or crimes being committed as an excuse to gain control. But please understand, it's only for your safety. I would like to take a break from this review to deconstruct this misconception that a lot of people have of me. I am 100% okay with media having political messages in them. Breaking Bad, for example, has a sneaky little message about how the war on drugs hurts everyone. But it's subtle, the writers are not beating you over the head with it. Andor also has a political message, but it's done in a very subtle way that doesn't ruin your experience. You're able to come to your own conclusion. The main character is not just stopping the story to say, the Germans during World War II were bad, okay? Instead of just telling you, they're showing you why the Empire is bad. Okay, I just wanted to get that off my chest real quick. Let's get back to the review. I will say that I like how the Empire didn't just immediately come to power. They just slowly took it bit by bit over the course of several years. Keep in mind, the Senate was still active until the start of New Hope, but despite all of this government overreach, the officer Lady Desra recognizes the heist for what it actually is, the start of the rebellion. Vel receives a message from Luthen to take out Andor because he's a loose end. Yeah, despite this guy being on the side of the rebellion, he's not exactly the most moral person. He's kind of a do whatever it takes to win kind of guy. And I'm not gonna lie, I like the rebellion being shown as morally gray. Cyril is working in an office job where he's just, well, another cog in the machine. At one point in his life, he felt like the main character, and now he's just a background character. Mon Mothma, someone who has been funding the rebels, is a little nervous that the Empire might look into her baking records. Andor returns to Ferrix, his home. He tells his mom that she should leave the planet with him. As she's thinking it over, Andor goes to visit his other friends that he owes money to.
Oh, you know what, just give me till next Friday, I'll have it for you.
Oh, that's funny. I could have sworn I said have it today.
Yeah, I don't have it, sorry.
Oh, well, all right then. That's good, OJ.
And thanks to that heist, he finally has the money to pay them back. One of which is the girl mechanic, Bix. Yeah, that was her name. I'm not gonna lie, I completely forgot about her. Unfortunately for Andor, he didn't receive the welcome home party he was expecting. In fact, most people on Ferrix hate him now, and they want nothing to do with him. They blame him for the authority the Empire now holds over their planet. Yep, if it wasn't for those 2 men Andor killed in episode 1 on the planet Morlania, none of this would have happened. And unfortunately for Andor, his mother decides to stay on the planet Ferrix. We also learned that this road that Andor constantly walks through on Ferrix is the same road where his adopted father was hung. Oh, and the acting between Andor and his mother is just so perfectly done. You really feel like these two care for one another. Andor says goodbye to his adopted mother and leaves. Then he goes to the luxurious planet of Niamos. Oh my god, it looks like the country of Qatar and the state of California had a baby. It looks like he's living it up until one day he's arrested by the officer for being a part of it? Yeah, apparently this officer believes he's part of a group of men who did something. we're not even told what the crime is, but they believe Andor is a part of it, so they arrest him. Andor is sentenced to 6 months in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. All thanks to the heist he committed, government control is, well, more authoritarian than ever before. And now he's going to be paying the price for his actions. And that's the end of episode 7. Yep, it's a standalone episode. It wasn't a group of 3 episodes, it was just one. I knew they could do it. Now, while episode 7 may be my favorite standalone episode, the next group of 3 episodes has my favorite story arc, the prison arc. Andor is sent to an island prison. Okay, it's not really an island, it's more like a base on the water, on the planet Narkino 5. Also, I'm not gonna lie, the prison arc almost feels like a completely different show. Don't get me wrong, it's still a good show, but it's so different from what came before. Now, if you've seen the movie Face Off, then you probably remember just how impractically expensive the prison was in that movie. Like, do you have any idea how crazy expensive it is to have every single prisoner wear electromagnetic boots? Well, in this prison, the guards all wear rubber boots, and the entire floor is electrified. Yep, the guards have the power to shock an entire prison floor, whether it's to incapacitate or execute. And I just gotta point out that this is not cost-effective at all. I'm sorry to go off topic yet again, but I just gotta say, I really hate the prison system. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some people who are so powerful and dangerous that they have to be locked up, like a Colombian drug lord or something. But there are still way too many people in prison that we don't need to lock up. Now, don't quote me on this, but last I checked, the average prisoner costs the taxpayers 35 grand a year. And last time I checked, American prisons don't have electrified floors. So you gotta imagine just how much tax money is wasted on this stupid prison. The prisoners are set up into groups to work on machinery. The groups are all forced to compete against one another. Whoever does the best job gets food that has taste. And the ones who do the worst get a very cruel punishment. Each group is looked over by a shift manager, and the one looking over Andor's group is Andy Serkis. He's what's known as a model prisoner. All he wants to do is serve his time and then go free. The other prisoners ask Andor if he has any news about the outside world. He tells them about how bad Marvel movies have gotten, and they all walk away extremely disappointed. Episode 8 starts off with Cyril and Desra bonding over their mutual hatred for Andor. Mon Mothma tries to fight against government control, but the entire Senate tells her to fuck off. What I do find interesting is that the Senate isn't refusing to fight against the Empire out of fear, but more so out of, well, not really giving a shit. And unfortunately, that's, pretty realistic. There are countless horrific things happening all around the world right now that we could do something about, but we just don't care. Mon Mothma is clearly frustrated with the predicament she is in. It's as if she's the only one who notices just how powerful the Empire is becoming. Her family, along with the entire Senate, seems to be against her. She gets so desperate at one point that she contemplates marrying her daughter off to a rich banker's son. I know a lot of people don't like the politics in Star Wars, but man, I wish we just got some of this in the Star Wars sequel trilogy. Back on Ferrix, Bix tries to send a message to Luthen, but unfortunately for her, it's intercepted by the Empire, and she's captured. Well, she's a modern woman in Star Wars, so she'll easily break out of this, right? Right? Oh my god, she's being tortured! Meanwhile, Luthen meets up with Saw Gerrera, who's honestly way better in this show than he was in Rogue One. Instead of just some guy who gives very awkwardly delivered dialogue, in this he's more of a rebel who prefers to work alone. One could call him a rebel without a cause. He doesn't really trust anyone, but Luthen tries to convince him to give air support for an attack on an Empire power station. Pay attention to this because it will become important later. Back on the prison, 2 prisoners speak to one another from different levels through sign language. Apparently, something really bad happened on one of the lower levels, and we're not told what it is. Were they sharing a cell with a booty warrior? Were they all being turned into a giant human centipede? Is the prison also now holding non-human prisoners? I don't know! Whatever it was is left intentionally vague, and it builds up suspense. One day, one of Andor's old prison mates suffers a stroke. A medic who's also a prisoner treats him. He's one of the very few prisoners who's allowed to walk between different levels of the prison, so Andor, of course, course tries to probe him for information. The medic euthanizes the old guy and says it's better for him this way, and then he reveals that there was a riot on level 2. Apparently one of the prisoners who finally finished his full sentence was immediately reinstated into the prison, but on a different level. The floor on level 2 was of course electrified, executing all of the prisoners on the spot. Now you see, there's nothing that triggers a human more than the complete and utter loss of all hope. During the times of the transatlantic slave trade, slaves in America had a little bit of hope that they could escape through the Underground Railroad and find freedom. But the slaves on the island of Hades did not have anywhere to escape to. That's one of the main reasons why they had a successful revolt, because the people had lost all hope. Now that none of the men have any hope of ever being released from this prison, they only have one thing that they can do: escape. And that's why episode 10 is called One Way Out. Since Andor arrived at this prison, he's been slowly chipping away at this water pipe. And now that the rest of the prisoners want to break out of here, it's now the perfect time to let the water flow. The electric floor short circuits, and the guards start frantically shooting at the prisoners. Andor and Kino manage to fight their way to the central control. They force the guards to shut down the power, and Andor convinces Kino to give a speech over the intercoms that the prison is now under their control. Now, Kino has had no problems giving orders up to this point, but now he's visibly shaken. Maybe he's nervous that this prison break won't work, or he just can't believe he's finally going to be able to taste freedom. But he manages to give an inspiring speech, and they all fight their way to the exit. They jump in the water and swim away, but unfortunately for Kino, he has to stay behind, because in an ironic twist of fate, he can't swim. Andor, along with the rest of the audience, is left wondering whatever became of him. Episode 10 ends with Luthen meeting up with this guy. At first I thought he was some random character, but no, he's actually one of the board members of the ISB. Unlike literally every other Disney Star Wars TV show, this one rewards you for paying attention. The fact that Luthen has a man this powerful on the inside really shows how the rebellion was able to get a foothold. We only have one more story arc to go over, which is stretched across the last 2 episodes. Everything has been building to this moment, so let's hope the payoff was worth it. Episode 11 starts off with the death of Andor's adopted mother, Marva. Yep, she's just dead. Andor never had the chance to say goodbye to her. The ISB, who have been absolutely desperate to capture Andor, believe that he will not be able to keep himself away from attending her funeral. So they use her funeral as a trap to capture her adopted son? Wow, these guys are evil. Her funeral is made into a big event, and it will be attended by almost every single character we have met up to this point. Dedra is the one who gives the order to make the funeral into a very public one in order to capture Andor. Speaking of Andor, him along with one of his prison buddies aren't really home free quite yet. Sure, they're out of the prison, but the Empire is still looking for them. They constantly have to keep themselves hidden. Eventually, they're caught in the net of a Narkinian, I think that's what those things are called, and oh my god, finally, we get another alien in this show. The 2 aliens do not turn Andor and his friend over to the Empire. The prisons they set up poisoned the water supply and killed the fish, so the locals of this planet aren't too happy with them being here. The Narkinians have basically nothing in common with Andor and his friend, except for one thing, and that's hatred for the Empire. The aliens agree to take Andor back to Niamos, and we get to, one of my biggest problems with not only this episode, but the entire show. Despite how long Andor was in prison, all of his stuff is still in the hotel room. Okay, there's no way that the hotel staff cleaned out this room over and over and kept on missing this suitcase. This is yet another super convenient thing that happened so that the plot could move forward. Now, towards the end of this episode, Andor receives the sad news of his mother's passing. He finally did something that she could be proud of him for, and he'll never get the chance to tell her. The lesbian power couple Val and Cinta, who are now stranded on Ferrix, send out a message to Luthen about the funeral. Cyril also receives word about the funeral. We cut to Luthen, who has to make a very difficult decision, so bear with me here, this is gonna get a little confusing. So there's a character we never meet, but we do see a hologram of him. His name is Krieger. And yes, I do realize there's also a character in this show by the name of Cyril. Maybe it's just me, but those characters' names make me really really want to watch the show Archer again. Oh, who knows, maybe this entire series is another one of Archer's coma dreams. At the end of episode 10, the ISB guy warned Luthen that the ISB knows about the attack that's going to happen on the power station, and they set up a trap. If Krieger is warned about the trap, then the ISB would know that there's an imposter among us. But if Krieger isn't warned about the trap, him, along with his 30 men, would all be killed. But it would make the ISB feel overconfident, making them more likely to make a mistake in the future. Luthen only warned Saw about the trap so he can use him in the future. And this scene explains why in Rogue One, Saw was just so paranoid of everyone. This is Luthen's biggest problem. He's not building a rebellion. He's just using people to go after the Empire. A community is based on trust. Without trust, there is no faith. And if there's no faith, there is no hope. And hope is the only thing that can defeat the Empire. We cut to Vel, who turns out is the cousin of Mon Mothma. And we get to probably my favorite part of this entire series. Mon Mothma makes the difficult decision of marrying off her daughter. Sure, her daughter is not against the idea, but Mon Mothma knows her daughter will not be happy in the long run. She also stages an argument with her husband in front of their driver. Keep in mind, he is a spy. She makes the driver believe that the reason why there's money missing from their bank account is because her husband has a gambling problem. This whole plan will drive a wedge between her and her husband, and also damage his reputation. She's sacrificing her family for the sake of the rebellion. No one will ever know what she gave up, but she did it for a cause that was much bigger than herself. She's not a Jedi, a warrior, or a tactical battle genius, but she has proven to me that she's the strongest the strongest character in all of Star Wars. Hell definitely looks like Hoth right now, because Disney actually took a character from the original trilogy and made them better. Mon Mothma went from the only other woman in Star Wars other than Leia to an unsung hero. Good job, Mickey. You get a gold star sticker for this one. Alright, one more episode left. Episode 12, the finale. We start the episode off with all of Andor's friends and foes meeting up at the funeral. Andor reads the manifesto of that one character you forgot the name of. The funeral starts and man, it is shot so perfectly. I know this is a TV show, but for a second I thought I was watching a movie, because this is just so grand and big. The Empire tries to only allow 40 people of Ferrix to attend the funeral, but they say fuck that, and they all show up. Andor's adopted mom said in episode 3 that there would be a sound of reckoning soon, but this is not what I expected. Eventually, the marching band stops in front of the Empire blockade, and B2 makes a hologram of Marva. Her speech is just so beautifully written. She talks about how the people of Ferrix all had one another, and the Empire mostly left them alone. It was easy to ignore what the Empire was doing, but now it's time for them to wake up. After all, the only way for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. She tells the people of Ferrix that it's time to fight against the Empire. An Imperial captain covers up the hologram and knocks over B2. This is the last straw, and the people start fighting back. Marva's remains are used as a weapon. Oh my god, this is awesome. The bell ringer takes out a stormtrooper. Wow, I don't think I've ever cared about a background character so much before. Homemade bombs are being used, and the fighting escalates from just a riot to a full-blown battle. But the Empire has something the people don't, and that's a lot of guns. The people are being shot down left and right. There's chaos everywhere. Luthen witnesses the fighting for himself, but he's just standing there, menacingly. Dedra is furious that all of her careful planning was for nothing. She starts shooting the people of Ferrix, but then she's hit in the head by a rock and falls to the ground. She's about to be dragged off and killed by the locals, but luckily for her, Cyril comes in and saves her and wait, what? A man saved a woman in modern Star Wars? Yes, that happened. You're not dreaming. Cinta even joins in on the battle, but she's not really here to help anyone. She's only trying to get revenge on a specific ISB agent. But there is someone who joins the chaos to save another person, and that man is Andor, and he saves Biggs, who's a woman? 2 women were saved by men in modern Star Wars back to back? What? Anyways, Andor brings Bix to a ship, the same ship he used in episode 1. But he's not leaving with them. He's done running away. He's done with only thinking about himself. And he's done with the Empire shit. He finds Luthen and gives him a choice. Either kill him or let him join the rebellion. And that's where episode 12 ends. Oh no, wait. There's also a post-credit scene where we see the machine the prisoners were working on Narkina 5. Okay, I still have no idea what it does, but at least we know it's gonna come into play later. But it seems like it's gonna be part of the Death Star and, yep, we see its construction. And that's where Andor Season 1 ends. Well, I gotta say, I'm curious as to where Season 2 will go. Maybe Cyril will become a part of the ISB. Maybe Andor will be building the team of Rogue One. I'm especially excited to see where the story arc of Mon Mothma will be going. It does amaze me that none of the characters really won. Every single character lost something, and you know what? That's war. I guess it's time for me to move on to my ending thoughts, and wow, I really love this show. Don't get me wrong, it had a handful of problems, and it was very difficult for me to remember what was going on. Personally, I would recommend watching this show twice to fully understand what's going on. Unlike every other Disney Star Wars TV show, it really rewards you if you pay attention. It doesn't set up rules then immediately breaks them like some other Disney Star Wars TV shows. I won't lie, I thought I wasn't going to enjoy Andor. I didn't really care about him in Rogue One, so I was confused as to why he was given his own show. But as I was watching, I realized something. This show is not about some Star Wars character we barely know. Instead, it's about how a normal guy dealt with the tyranny of the Empire until he eventually joined the rebellion. It just so happened that the character we followed was, well, Andor. I really wish the other Star Wars TV shows were handled at least half as well as this show. I would also like to see this type of storytelling in other series, like an Avatar show that takes place in the middle of the 100-Year War, and we follow the story of just some random non-bender. Mandalorian Seasons 1 and 2 may have been the Star Wars show I wish I had as a kid, but Andor is the Star Wars show that I'm happy to get as an adult. I highly recommend you guys go check out this show for yourself. Well, Jar, have I rekindled your love for Star Wars? No, you haven't, Mickey. Don't get me wrong, I think Andor is a good show, but it's not a good Star Wars show. And the only good Star Wars show you have made so far is The Mandalorian. And I'm about to review Season 3. I've heard just how awful it is. And now that I've just watched Andor, it will be even worse in comparison. Alright, let's review Mandalorian Season 3. Hey everybody, bad news, I'm a bit sick, and you can kind of hear it in my voice, but I need to get this video out in a timely manner, so as my review of The Mandalorian goes on, I will sound better and better. If you've seen my last Star Wars video, then you would know that I mostly enjoyed The Mandalorian up to this point. It did have a few problems and way too much filler, but it was the Star Wars show that I wish I had as a kid. I also thought that the best part of Book of Boba Fett was the bonus Mandalorian episode we got. Now I want you all to know that I haven't seen this season yet, but I will be reviewing it episode by episode as I see them. I have heard nothing but bad things about this season, so get ready to enjoy my suffering. I already knew that Mando got the baby back, and I also heard that this show became more and more about Bo-Katan. Anyways, let's review the one Star Wars show other than Andor that I enjoyed up to this point. Episode 1 starts off with a female Mandalorian blacksmith. Does she even have a name? Let me look this up real quick. Wait, really? Her name is the Armory? That's the name of an Iron Man villain or teammate, not a Star Wars character. Hello everybody, Editing Jar here. Apparently her name is the Armor, not the Armory, which is even more lame by the way. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to go back and re-record all the times I said her name wrong. But let's be honest here, does anyone actually really care about this character? Anyways, the, Armory is making a helmet. Not gonna lie, I thought that helmet was for Baby Yoda for a second. But no, it's for this kid, and I also thought that was Mando when he was a kid, and that this was a flashback, but it isn't. Now there's a very good reason as to why I thought this was a flashback, and no, it's not just because this kid has the exact same haircut as Mando did when he was a kid. It's because of all of the Mandalorians. Now why is that a problem? Well, in the Book of Boba Fett, and yes, I know I say his his name wrong, you don't have to keep telling me in the comments. It was stated by Mando that there was only 3 members of his tribe left, yet they had a kick-ass battle station somehow. Now, was it stupid that there was only 3 of them left? Yes, but this is also stupid. You can't just say they are all dead with no reason given, then bring them all back with also no reason given. What was Mickey thinking? Oh, no one watched the Book of Boba Fett, so we can retcon whatever we want. Now, is this a nitpick? Yes, it is. But the fact that the rules that were literally just established were changed already in the first scene isn't a good sign. Anyways, the kid is made part of the clan and promises to never take his helmet off. That kid is still growing. The helmet is gonna force his head to stay small. Mando has taken his helmet off before, because the rule was that no one can see his face, not that he couldn't take off his helmet. Also, do you think they all, you know, do it in the helmet? Or I guess they could also just turn off all the lights. But if it's the former, well, that makes it impossible to do oral. In all seriousness, that kid is gonna need a new one, and is that Beskar? I thought it was made clear that you had to earn it piece by piece. Now maybe the helmet is a freebie before you have to collect all the other parts. Oh my god, the Mandalorian clan gets you by giving you something for free, just like how pay-to-win games use microtransactions.
What, dude?
But why not just give the new members a normal helmet? They aren't gonna be fighting, and that material can be given to adults to be used. That stuff is expensive as well, so those kids are gonna have a target on their backs. Or I guess their heads. Lastly, why would any kid want to join this cult? At age 10 through 12, you have to wear a helmet all the time? Wow, cutting off your foreskin doesn't sound so bad by comparison. How long do you think any kid would wear a helmet? We couldn't even get adults to wear a mask for 2 years. Do you think that kid is really gonna leave that helmet on his head for the rest of his life? I don't know what kind of kid would join a cult like this, or how long they would even be able to stay in with such a stupid rule. The kid says that he knows the way. Then a giant fucking crocodile, even bigger than Prusiosaurus, comes out of the water. Now, I don't think all of those tiny humans will be enough to feed him, and I don't know why the Mandalorians thought this would be a good place to integrate new members into their group. The Mandalorians all start shooting at it, but their blasters can't penetrate its skin. Any other YouTuber would have made a sex joke, but not me. I have standards.
I can't believe they let that get past the censors. For those of you who don't get the joke, the joystick is a metaphor for penis.
They try explosives, but that doesn't even work. So do they use flamethrowers? Do they use missiles? Nope, they use the hookshot from Zelda to attach themselves to it. That thing is clearly stronger than all of them put together. For the best fighters in the galaxy after the Force users, they sure are stupid. It looks like they're all gonna die from their stupidity. But then Mando shows up in his upgraded N1 ship and takes out the monster. He asks the others, "Yo, now that I saved you all, can I rejoin the DK crew?" And they tell him that saving them all isn't good enough to make up for the sin of showing his face. In order for him to rejoin the DK crew, he will have to bathe in the waters beneath the mines of Mandalore, which were blown up. Okay, so let me get this straight. Mando removed his helmet to show his face to the baby. Then he told the others in his clan that he did that. And now he has to go on a near impossible mission to get back into a group that he just saved? Wow, this show is stupid. I thought he showed his face because he was done with all of that cult stuff, but now he wants to get back in, and the baby is back with him as well, so nothing has changed. All of the character development has been reversed. This is not a quest for redemption. He broke a stupid made-up rule for no reason, and now he has to go on a quest to get back into the same group he started in? How has this religion survived for as long as it did with rules this stupid and this strict? I can't even think of a real-world religion that is even close to this stupid. And that's saying something. Young, flat, hollow earthers are smarter than the Mandalorians, I swear. Mando flies away from the sand planet and goes to another sand planet. Also, not gonna lie, as much as I love Mando's new N1 ship, I do miss the old one because not only was it a ship, but it was also his home. What he has now is just a vehicle. It doesn't seem like it would be fun to sleep in. Also, to everyone who said Mando joined the final battle in Rise of Skywalker because we can see a ship in the background. Well, now that ship is gone along with your headcanon, but at least we got this ship you remember from an older another movie. The small town from the last 2 seasons is now a big city. Jesus, did 20 years go by from seasons 2 and 3 or something? There's a statue of IG-11 and Mando says to Baby Yoda, "Remember your old friend?" And Baby Yoda says, there's a group of space pirates that want to drink in a bar that was turned into a school. Yeah, they want to drink inside the school even though there's no alcohol in there. They are risking their lives pissing off a Mandalorian just so they can drink in their usual spot. Their leader, who was the one being stupid and making the issue in the first place, gets to live, but his men who were just following orders all get killed. Those kids just heard blaster shots, and they are going to come out to see a bunch of dead bodies. They are going to be almost as messed up as modern day American kids. Anyways, Mando really wants IG-11 repaired, because apparently he's a droid he can trust. Don't forget, he's racist against droids and he sees him as one of the good ones. Now in Solo, Rogue One, and Kenobi, we saw droids getting shot to death, but IG-11, despite blowing up, has a chance to be brought back to life? Apparently, despite the bomb going off in the middle of his chest in lava, only his legs and one arm were destroyed. But wait, how does that work? Well, if there's anything Disney Star Wars has taught us, it's that explosions heal you. But even then, he was in lava! So even if the blast didn't take him out, the melted rock that is over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit should have. I don't see why Mando has to have this droid. There are other bounty hunting droids that exist. Oh yeah, now I remember. It's because nostalgia is 90% of modern Disney writing. Like, I know he said he needs one he can trust, but can't he just find one with trustworthy programming? So IG-11 is brought back online and he tries to kill Baby Yoda. So much for a droid he can trust. We later learn that he defaulted to his old programming. The programming he lost after he was shot in the head. Reprogrammed and had to relearn everything. My god, this show is stupid. Mando seems to be having a hard time shooting a slow-moving droid that's a few feet in front of him. Also, when the blaster shots do hit, they barely do any damage, despite one to the head killing him last time. Like, come on now, that's episode 1. An inbred version of C-3PO pushes over a statue, crushing the droid. They take him to Babu Frick's family to fix him up, but they will need to put a new memory chip in. Mando seems cool with this, even though he wanted the droid in the first place because he knew him. A new memory chip will make IG-11 a new droid. Yes, everyone, we're back to writers forgetting what they just wrote. Oh, and the best part is, they don't even make that kind of memory chip that this droid needs anymore. I mean, after all, it is an IG-11. General Grievous's bodyguards were IG-100s. That thing's way out of date. So does Mando give up on recruiting this droid? Of course not! He goes on another fetch quest to repair it. Mando goes to meet with Bo-Katan to see if she has the part, and he also tells her that he now really wants to join the DK crew. She tells him she lost all her men and ships? The fuck? Did I miss a season or something? So much has changed! The small town is now a city. Mando's old group went from 2 people to dozens of people, and Katan's army that she was building is suddenly gone. Literally, everything has been changed. She explains that her men fucked off because she didn't come back with the Darksaber. Wait a second, I thought her group was less religious. Also, Mando has the Darksaber, but his old group won't let him rejoin just because he showed his face? That would be like Jesus coming back and Christians telling him that he has to leave because he used his own name in vain. So far, this is worse than Kenobi already. At least the first episode of that show wasn't as bad as the first episode of Mandalorian Season 3. Anyways, we only have, oh god, 7 more episodes to go. Day 2 of recording while I'm sick. I hope I sound a lot better this time around, and I also put a blanket on my standing desk, so hopefully the echo won't be as bad in my room. Now, out of every episode of Mandalorian Season 3, I think this is going to be my shortest review yet, because I can't say that much about this episode because, well, not that much happens in it. The episode starts off with a mechanic lady talking to different alien species like Rhodians and Jawas. If you want to know why she's talking to them, well, it's so the writers can pad out this episode. I wasn't joking when I said not much happens in this episode. Oh, hey Jar, how you doing? Do you got change for $5? Yeah, let me see here. I got $4, 3 quarters, and only 2 dimes and 3 pennies, so you'll be 2 pennies short. I just want to get something out of the vending machine, but it's an old model and it only takes ones, so that works for me. All right, bye, Mickey. Wasn't that pointless? Mando flies down to meet her and inquires if she has the droid part for IG-11. She tells him that sounds boring, and I agree, this entire episode's plot is pretty boring. She offers to sell him the droid with depression, R5. Yeah, he went from having a cameo in season 1 to being on Mando's team because Disney just really loves to milk that nostalgia. Now remember how in the last episode Mando says he needs a droid he can trust? Well, the writers forgot about that. Instead, he says he can't use an astromech because he needs a droid to scan ahead to see if the atmosphere is breathable? Okay, first of all, the writers are forgetting why Mando wanted IG-11 in the first place, but aside from that, I think scanning ahead to see if the atmosphere is breathable is something that an astromorph would do and not a fucking assassin droid! And do you really need a droid for that? That just sounds like a common part you can buy in any store in the Star Wars universe. Hell, you don't even need to buy something, just pick up a small rat, throw it out, and see what happens. You heard the old saying, canary in the coal mine? Yeah, that's what the canary was used for. The mechanic lady tells Mando that it's built for adventure. That does not mean it can scan if the atmosphere is breathable or not. I guess she just wants to get him killed. And then Mando says that he has no room for it on the N1. Bro, compared to IG-11, that thing looks like it's way easier to store on a ship. In fact, when the N1 was first introduced, R2, which is an astromech droid, was on the ship with Anakin. And me having knowledge about this has nothing to do with me being a Star Wars nerd. I asked my roommate, Professor Dreadlock, about this. He hates Star Wars with a burning passion, and even he knew this. She offers to sell the droid for half price. If any salesman or woman does that, don't accept it. There's a reason why they're selling it for half price. And Mando, who went from I need a droid who I can trust to I need a droid that can scan the atmosphere to I'll just take any droid that I can get, buys R5, and oh my god, he's on the ship. Mando, you do have room for it. You see, Jar, it's not as bad writing as you thought it was. Mando was actually lying because he didn't want to buy the droid, not that he actually didn't have the room for it. The writers are smarter than you give them credit for. Actually, this makes the writing even worse because Mando just tried to lie to a ship mechanic who also works with droids and didn't think she wouldn't know this. Mando flies off and there are fireworks everywhere. No, I don't know why. Mando lands on the old Mandalore planet and oh my god, it's not a desert planet for once. Oh, I'm so happy! The droid leaves to scan ahead and then Mando loses contact with it. Well, luckily it was a cheap droid so he can just come back later, right? Nope, he decides to get out of the ship, risking his life. He doesn't know if the atmosphere is toxic or not. I think buying a gas mask would have been a smart investment, but apparently he didn't think so. Mando enters a dark cave that leads to an underground city, and then he comes across I don't know, Murlocs from the time machine. He fights against them and I won't lie, the action is pretty cool. But then he pulls out the Darksaber and it's incredibly heavy for some reason. You would know the reason if you watched the cartoon, but if you just saw this, you would be asking yourself, man, that lightsaber is not so light now, is it? He saves R5, and even though we were told that an astromorph can't scan the atmosphere, well, it scanned the atmosphere! And it tells Mando that the air is breathable, which we already knew because we just saw those alien creatures. So yeah, R5 could have been completely written out and nothing would change. He's only here for nostalgia and nothing else. Yeah, Mando literally leaves him on the ship and he's forgotten about. Mando re-enters the cave with his blaster ready, but then he's attacked by the world's biggest crab droid ever. Like, I know crab droids are big, but holy shit, is that like a super crab droid or something? Imagine if someone threw this at Hungry Box. He would have gotten all his bones crushed. Like, very few people will actually get that joke. But it turns out it's not a crab droid, it's actually a droid piloting a droid. Baby Yoda tries to save Mando, but he tells Grogu, "Go get Bo-Katan. She's a woman, she can do anything in modern Star Wars." Baby Yoda starts retreating, and we get this epic chase music, but I think the effects team forgot to, put the crab droid behind him chasing him. Baby Yoda is about to exit the cave, but then a Murloc blocks his path, ready to give him a hug. Baby Yoda says, "No, bad touch and uses the Force to push him away. Okay, I guess R5 did do one more thing. He flew the ship with Baby Yoda inside to meet with Bo-Katan. Don't know how the droid knew to do that, but whatever. Bo-Katan gets into the ship and they fly back to Mandalore, and okay, it was mentioned earlier that she was in the same system as this planet, but hours have passed by now. Mando is dead. Bo-Katan goes down the exact same path we just saw Mando go down. You know, I made a lot of video game jokes, but this is like watching a Let's Play where the second player does exactly what the first player just did. Unlike Mando, Bo-Katan does not fall for the same traps that he did because she's better than him in every single way. We get an action scene and it's pretty cool, but I just gotta ask, why do the Murlocs keep setting up ambushes? How many human travelers even pass by this place? Bo-Katan says to Baby Yoda, "Did you think your dad was the only Mandalorian?" And Baby Yoda's like, no, really early on I was saved by like a whole group of them. And I've met you before. What the hell are you talking about? The evil droid hooks up Mandalore to this tube so he can drain his fluids, I guess. And then Bo-Katan comes in to save him, but she keeps getting zapped by electricity until she picks up the Darksaber and can easily wield it. Why? Well, it's because she has a vagina. She even takes out the Super Crab droid because she is just that badass. Eventually, Mando wakes up, but he's clearly delirious because he asks her how she found him. Bro, you sent Baby Yoda to get her. That's how she found you. They continue deeper into the mines of Mandalore, and Bo-Katan exposition dumps her backstory. Wow, it's so naturally inserted into the story, because this is how real people talk. They come across the living waters, and Mando is ready to baptize himself, but it turns out the reason why it's called the living waters is because there's something living inside of it. Oh my god! Who could have seen that coming? Like, I'm not even joking, there's literally a plaque that tells them that there's something living inside the water. And what is living inside the water? I think it's Cthulhu. For some reason, he drags Mando down, Bo-Katan goes in the water to get him, and then he kind of just lets Bo-Katan leave with Mando. Okay. And, yeah, that's, kind of where the episode ends. Even as far as Mandalorian filler goes, this is really pushing it. You could cut this whole episode down into, like, 2 scenes and it would work just as well. So don't blame me for this episode review being so short. Blame the episode for having nothing in it. Anyways, let's move on to episode 3, and hopefully when I review it, I will finally no longer be sick. Every now and then, there's a massive amount of Star Wars fans that just say, bro, I can't take it anymore, I'm done with the franchise.
Skywalker.
You people make me envy the deaf and the blind!
For a few, it was the prequels. For some, it was Last Jedi. For a lot, it was Rise of Skywalker. Others left because of Book of Boba Fett or because of Kenobi. But Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3 was another one of those moments when a bunch of Star Wars fans just left. And I'm reviewing this on the tail end of my sickness, so I'm like double suffering here, man. It's considered the worst episode of The Mandalorian so far, and it's also the longest.
Hit him with the Mickey Mouse Clubhouse dance.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Anyways, episode 3 starts off right where episode 2 ended. Mando wakes up, apparently being dragged underneath the water for less than a minute knocked him out somehow.
This is real cuck shit, man.
He also does not thank Bo-Katan for saving him, kind of a dick move, not gonna lie.
I think you should be down on your fucking knees.
Oh, and if you want to know why he was knocked out from being dragged underneath the water, well, it's so that she could have been the one to see the monster, and not him. Apparently, this draws parallels between her and the first Mandalorian. So yeah, she's the chosen one, because of course she is.
This diva needs her stage!
Mando collects some of the water and they leave the planet, but then they're attacked by a group of TIE interceptors. Well, those are short-range fighters that don't have hyperdrives on them, so there must be a Star Destroyer that's nearby. Right? Right? Well, the writers can barely remember their own rules that they set up for themselves only a few minutes ago, sometimes even a few seconds ago, so I'm not surprised at all that they forgot that TIE fighters, TIE bombers, and TIE interceptors are short-range ships that don't have hyperdrives on them. We get a ship battle, and for the most part, it's pretty serviceable, except for this one really badass moment where Mando jumps out of the ship and flies towards his own ship in his jetpack. He gets in and blasts off just in time. Oh, it's so cool. And it will be the last cool thing we see for quite a while. The TIE Interceptors chase after Bo-Katan while Mando, destroys them from behind. They don't try to deal with him at any point, they're just focused on her more so than their own lives apparently. This is not a strategic maneuver, it's only working because their enemies are just so stupid. A bunch of TIE bombers show up and they destroy Bo-Katan's castle. Even more enemies show up and Bo-Katan and Mando realize that there's too many of them. What are they going to do? Well, they decide to retreat and jump into hyperspace. You know, for the worst episode of The Mandalorian so far, it's not actually that bad. I was expecting way worse. Don't get me wrong, it's kind of dumb, but I kind of feel like episode 1 is still worse. Well, this is the moment when the episode takes a nosedive off of the Grand Canyon. So you know how the best part of Book of Boba Fett was that random Mandalorian episode we got? Well, season 3 of The Mandalorian has a random episode of this guy in it. You're probably asking yourself, who the fuck is this? Well, he showed up near the end of the first season of The Mandalorian. I didn't go over him because, well, I thought he would never show up again, but not only is he back, but this episode primarily focuses on him for some reason. He was the guy trying to collect cells from Baby Yoda so he could make a Snoke clone or something. I could say his name, but honestly, does anyone care? I'm just gonna call him Scientist Guy. Scientist Guy is giving a speech on, oh my god, it's Coruscant. Finally, we see that planet once again. His speech is about how he used to work for the Empire on cloning experiments, but then after he was apprehended by the New Republic, he still wants to continue his cloning research because he lost his mother, and if they cloned a heart for her, she could have survived. This is actually a pretty good speech. Unfortunately, it drags on for way too long, and then he has pointless small talk with a bunch of rich elites that also drag on for way too long. And if that wasn't enough padding for this episode, he then takes a cab where this droid constantly goes on and on about things he can do in Coruscant. Wow, I'm sure this is very integral to the story and wasn't just added in to pad out the episode. The Scientist Guy goes to his apartment complex, where he and a whole bunch of other ex-Empire people live. They are confined to this area of the city, which I guess makes sense, they are ex-Empire. And the Scientist Guy mentions that he came back from a re-education camp. Yeah, the New Republic, which are supposed to be the good guys, are taking undesirable people, putting them into camps, forcing them to do labor, and making them wear a specific outfit with a special symbol on it. And if any of these former Empire members break any of the rules, they are forced into these camps until they are re-educated enough. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention their real names are taken away and they're referred to by a number.
I have several questions.
Now, on the one hand, I do prefer from a storytelling perspective that the New Republic isn't 100% good. I like it when the quote-unquote good side and the quote-unquote evil side are a lot more morally gray than we were originally led to believe. But I don't think that's what the writers intended. In fact, I think they're just pandering to China. And making the quote-unquote good side this evil is a little bit much for me. Let's just hope the writers don't actually think this is what an example of good government is. Oh, who am I kidding? They absolutely do. We also meet another ex-Empire member who was from a previous episode, who we also don't really care about. I could say her name, but I'm just gonna refer to her as Lesbian Haircut. Scientist Guy says he misses the MREs he used to eat while he worked for the Empire, and Lesbian Haircut Lady gets him a whole bunch of MREs. And then Scientist Guy and Lesbian Haircut enjoy a stroll through the city while eating CGI ice cream? What the hell? Now, I've heard from some people that CGI is always cheaper than real actual props. I'm gonna tell you right now, that's complete bullshit. They had CGI soup in Kenobi. Couldn't they just go to the store and pay $1 or $2 for a can of soup instead of having CGI soup? I can tell that they're not actually enjoying the ice cream because they're not licking something sweet. They're licking a green screen prop on a stick. Later on, the Scientist Guy has a discussion with his parole droid. He says he wants to continue his research on cloning, but the parole droid says that cloning research is banned because of some treaty. What? Cloning organs would be a great great benefit to, well, everyone. Is the New Republic actually this stupid? Cloning is one of the greatest scientific advancements in their entire galaxy. Why ban something so useful? Also, one more thing. Nothing has happened this entire story arc. Was this originally an unused episode of Andor or something? Writers, maybe there was a reason why this episode idea wasn't used. I'm just gonna skip ahead until we actually get some plot. So scientist guy and lesbian haircut decide to leave their confined area so they can steal a bunch of equipment so the scientist guy can continue his cloning research.
But wait! There's more!
Now, how do they leave their confined area? Well, they sneak aboard a train. But how do they sneak aboard a train? Well, this door is about to close and lesbian haircut stops it with her foot, forcing it to open up, and then they walk through. Wow, the advanced technology of the Star Wars universe was pretty easily tricked. And keep in mind, this is Coruscant, basically the most advanced planet in the entire Star Wars galaxy. There was no cameras to catch this, no security droids, or anything. Keep in mind, in season 1 of The Mandalorian, we're introduced to tracking fobs, which allow bounty hunters to track people down throughout the galaxy. Anyone anywhere can just be, well, tracked. So we're supposed to believe that a piece of technology that is commonly used by bounty hunters isn't implemented by the most advanced planet of the New Republic to track ex-Empire scientists.
It's a fictional product. It doesn't matter.
Lesbian haircut and scientist guy make some pointless small talk, and then 2 security droids finally show up and say, "Tickets, please." Well, it looks like our 2 main characters for this episode are fucked. I'm joking, of course. They jump off the train and conveniently land in a pile of pillows. Yes, everyone, it's another super convenient thing for the plot to move forward. I really should complain about this more, but at this point, I'm used to the terrible writing from Disney. And also, in literally the next scene, there's another super convenient thing that happens for the plot to move forward. They come across an Imperial Star Destroyer, which should have the equipment that the scientist guy needs. And of course, it's unguarded. Why? Well, it's because it's inoperable. Now, first of all, it's not. The lights are still on inside. But even if it can't fly or use any of its weapon systems, there's still a whole bunch of things it has on it that are extremely valuable. Just imagine if there was a captured battleship, and after its weapons and propellers were taken out, the government just left no security guarding it. People would be looting that thing left and right. And before you say, well, Jar, things just work differently in the Star Wars universe. Maybe scavengers just can't sell anything they salvage on that ship. Well, Rey was able to do it in The Force Awakens. That thing had to have been salvaged for decades, and she was still fighting good shit on it. The real reason as to why there's no one guarding this ship is because it's another super convenient thing that happened for the plot to move forward. So scientist guy and lesbian haircut take a whole bunch of expensive stuff. Apparently they were the first ones to ever do this. But then a bunch of New Republic guards show up and they arrest the scientist guy. It turns out that lesbian haircut set him up. Oh my god, a woman in a modern day TV show did something evil for once, but she did it to a bad person, so I guess it's okay. The scientist guy is brought to a facility that will use, I don't know, shock therapy on him or something. This device could erase his memories, but the voltage is going to be very low and he's gone through this procedure before, so he'll be fine. In fact, it will actually make him kind of happy. The technician turns on the device and lesbian haircut says, "Oh, he was my friend, so since you're all leaving, I want to be with him since he's my friend." And the technician is like, "Well, that doesn't sound suspicious at all. I'll just leave you here with him." She of course cranks the device up to 11. Apparently there was no safeguards in place to prevent this from happening. What if someone slipped and accidentally moved the knob up to maximum? The scientist guy is in a lot of pain and he's presumably lobotomized, and yeah, that's where this side story ends. After watching this stupid side plot, I wish I was the one who was lobotomized. Anyways, at long last, we finally cut back to Mando and Bo-Katan. They meet up with the other Mandalorians and Mando has been redeemed, but Bo-Katan has also been redeemed because, well, she bathed in the same waters as he did and she didn't remove her helmet since then. She tells them that she doesn't want to be part of their group and she doesn't know the way. Armory tells her that now that she has been in the water, she has Ebola, so she knows the way. And yeah, that's kind of where the episode ends. So would I say that episode 3 of Mandalorian season 3 is even worse than episode 3 of Kenobi? Yes! Not only was it bad, but it was also boring. It was like the worst parts of Andor combined with the worst parts of Kenobi. It only took me a day to review the first episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian. Same with Episode 2, but this episode took me 4 days to fully review. I kept on walking away from it because it was just that bad. But at least I only have one more episode until I'm halfway done. And also, I'm no longer sick. Well, I'm sick of this show, I'm just not physically sick anymore. Episode 4 starts off with the Mandalorians doing some grueling training, which involves things like shooting at the water? Okay. Baby Yoda gets challenged by one of the Mandalorian children to a 3-round paintball match. Baby Yoda loses the first 2 rounds and then jumps above the Mandalorian child and above him again and again and again, and then shoots him 3 times, and this causes him to win somehow. Okay, let's break down why this scene makes no sense. First of all, it's 1 shot per round. Just because you shoot him 3 times in 1 round doesn't mean you won. You shoot him once, now it's time for the next round, and then you shoot him again. So Baby Yoda only won because he cheated. Second, the only advantage that Baby Yoda's force jumping would have given him is that it would have confused his opponent. He jumped over the Mandalorian kid, landing behind him, then jumped back to exactly where he was before, and then shot him. He didn't shoot the Mandalorian kid while he was jumping around him, he just jumped around, landed in the exact same spot he was, and then fired his little paintball gun. The Mandalorian kid is a little upset that he lost, but then a giant alien pterodactyl shows up and mistakes him for the Pursuer Knight from Dark Souls 2 and swoops him up. Mando gets ready to shoot it down, but then the kid's dad says, no, if you attack it, it will kill the child immediately. And how does he know this? Well, it's because it's not the first time it's happened. Yeah, so you know how they were attacked in episode 1 by that giant sea creature? Well, they also have to deal with creatures from the air. Maybe they should, oh, I don't know, move or something. The Mandalorians went from some of the greatest warriors in the galaxy to a free meal for a wild animal. And before you say, well, Jar, they're near a bunch of alien monsters, so they can do some training to become great warriors. This thing just took a kid, and that was the same kid who was almost killed last time. We literally just saw them shooting at the ocean. They should have set up a perimeter or something. They used their jetpacks to chase after the monster, but they run out of fuel. I think this is the first time, like, ever a Mandalorian has run out of fuel. I think they have gone further than this in the cartoon, but the writers have never cared about canon before, so why would they care about it now? But more importantly, if they have run out of fuel every time they've chased after this thing, then why would they think this time would be any different? Have I ever told you the definition of insanity? It turns out that the Mandalorians did something stupid to make Bo-Katan look smart, because she actually chased after the thing in her ship. I want to make this clear, this does not make Bo-Katan look smart, it just makes the other Mandalorians look stupid. This has happened several times and none of the Mandalorians have thought to chase after this thing in the ship until Bo-Katan showed up? Are you kidding me? Bo-Katan does not shoot the pterodactyl thing out of the sky after it drops the Mandalorian child. Instead, she returns to base to tell the others where its location is. Now, to be fair, in season 1, Mando did make the same stupid mistake. I didn't point this out in my last video, but yes, Mando could have taken his ship and destroyed the AT-AT. By the way, the Mandalorians just walked back to their camp after their jetpacks took them as far as they could go. They also never take off their helmets, so I'm surprised it didn't collapse from heat stroke. Anyways, Bo-Katan goes over to rescue plan, which involves them not using their jetpacks because it will make too much noise, so they will have to scale the mountain. I think that kid is long dead, and if you guys take that much time, yeah, that kid is for sure gonna be dead. Then we get a random Baby Yoda flashback to the night of Order 66. By the way, in my last video I said I wish there was a Star Wars game that was fully set in the Jedi Massacre, and a few of you told me, oh, but what about Star Wars Battlefront? Do you guys understand what fully set in means? I don't mean just a section of the game, I mean fully set in the Jedi Massacre. Like, that's the main focus of the game. I didn't think I had to make that clear, but apparently I did. Anyways, we see a whole bunch of clone troopers shooting down Jedis. Baby Yoda is the last survivor, and he gets into an elevator. The clone troopers are shooting at him like 3 feet in front of him, but somehow they don't hit him. I thought the meme was that stormtroopers were bad at aim, not clone troopers. Baby Yoda is saved by a Jedi who wields both a blue and green lightsaber. He takes out a few clone troopers, hops into a speeder, and drives off with Baby Yoda, and yeah, that's it. Kind of seems like a pointless scene that only exists to pad out this episode. Now I'm gonna point this out so you all don't start screaming about it in the comments. The Jedi is played by the same guy who voiced Jar Jar Binks in the prequels. Now the media will tell you that he dealt with massive massive backlash from the fan base. And while I'm sure he got a few hate letters, the media was the one that slandered him way more. Keep in mind, the internet was very primitive back then. In fact, the third Star Wars movie came out in 2005. Know what else came out in 2005? YouTube! Oh yeah, also in this flashback, the clone troopers are in this massive ship covered in guns. And instead of using this ship to blow up the Jedi's getaway vehicle, they decide to land and start shooting their rifles at the ship, which, of course, don't do any damage at all. Anyways, back in the present, the female Mandalorian blacksmith makes Baby Yoda a disc. For a second, I thought it was going to be a Beskar shield, but no, that would be awesome. Instead, it's just placed in the center of his chest over his Beskar chainmail. This thing needs protection other places. Give it some gauntlets or a helmet or something else that doesn't involve putting armor on top of armor. They make it to the base of the mountain where the alien pterodactyl thing lives, and then they decide to camp out for the night. Okay, if that kid wasn't dead before, he's sure gonna be eaten now. Bo-Katan asks, how do we eat if we can't take our helmets off? And the other Mandalorians say, oh, we go to a safe place where we can take off our helmet and we eat in private, which is information we already knew, so this scene is pointless. In the morning, they climb up the mountain in very heavy armor to a giant nest where there's a whole bunch of Mandalorian remains. They come across a few of the alien pterodactyl babies and they alert their mother. She shows up and then... oh my god, she regurgitates the Mandalorian kid. He's been in her stomach for at least 24 hours. How has her stomach acids not completely turned him into goop by now? I guess you could say his armor protected him, but how did he not suffocate in there? Anyways, they defeat the alien pterodactyl thing by tying it up, causing it to fall into the water, and then it's devoured by an alien crocodile. Oh yeah, and the Mandalorians also decide to enslave its children so they can be used as weapons later. Our heroes, ladies and gentlemen. Blacksmith lady says, you have done the highest honor of the creed by saving a foundling. 3 episodes ago, Mando saved that kid, and all of you. I think that's a bit of a higher honor. And then Bo-Katan gets a new piece of armor or something, and that's where our episode ends. I will say that every episode of this season has gotten worse and worse, but so far, none of them are as bad as Kenobi episode 4. But at least I'm halfway done with this show, just 4 more episodes to go. Episode 5 of The Mandalorian Season 3 starts off by answering a very important question. What if Swamp Thing from DC Comics was a Muppet? I'm not joking, the episode starts with Apollo Creed getting a call from the pirate captain, and he looks like a Muppet version of Swamp Thing. Just listen to his voice.
Don't believe my eyes.
Yeah, that voice does not fit him at all. So do you remember how in the first episode of Season 3, Mando killed that group of pirates but left their leader alive so he could tell their boss what he did? Well, he did that, and now the pirate captain wants retribution for what happened to his men. Now, I know the writers think they're clever because they set up this plot a whole 4 episodes in advance, but they're not. First of all, this whole conflict with the pirates started because the pirates wanted to be served alcohol in a children's school? I'm willing to bet that any gang or criminal group has never started a conflict over their usual drinking spot being changed into something else. It is like the most contrived reason for a conflict to start. Like, did the writer for this scene just write down the first thing that popped into their head? Second, Mando only left one of the pirates alive so that this conflict could happen in the first place. In other words, this could have all easily been avoided. Apollo Creed says to Muppet Swamp Thing, "This planet is under the protection of the New Republic." And Muppet Swamp Thing says, "You're bluffing. Also never call you again unless it's to surrender." Okay, that was completely incomprehensible. Let me try that again.
You're clearly bluffing. Anyways, never call me again unless it's to surrender.
And Apollo Creed is like, you know you're the one that called me, right? Yes, everyone, it's another one of those scenes that was clearly rewritten, but only partially. The pirates start bombing the town, and Apollo Creed thinks to himself, oh no, I didn't think I would have to deal with consequences for my actions. Maybe I should have killed all the pirates or let them drink inside that school. God, I am so stupid. Apollo Creed sends a message to the X-Wing pilot that we have seen in previous episodes. And yes, I'm sure he has a name, but I'm just gonna call him, Dollar Store Mr. Miyagi. Now, Apollo Creed does probably the most entitled thing any Star Wars character has done up to this point. He makes a request to the New Republic to save his world from the pirates. Now, I know that doesn't really sound that entitled, but keep in mind, he refused to join the New Republic because he wanted his world to stay independent, but he still expects to get protection from them, and no, he will not join them if they send help. So he wants all the benefits of being a part of a big government without paying into it. planet. And Dollar Store Mr. Miyagi decides to fly all the way to Coruscant to ask them to send aid. If I was in his shoes, I would have just told Apollo Creed, fuck you, man, I'm a taxpayer. Oh yeah, and the alien from the Rebels TV show is in the background. There's no reason why he's here, but he's there. Dollar Store Mr. Miyagi makes it to Coruscant, and he makes a request to a colonel to send troops to Arvala 7, and wait, what? Yep, this whole time I thought that desert planet was Tatooine, but there's like a cajillion different desert planets in Star Wars now, so it's kind of hard to tell. The colonel says that he's never heard of this planet before. You're a New Republic officer. Moff Gideon was on that planet with a lot of his forces. How have you not heard of it? Lesbian Haircut comes into the room and she says, yes, I have heard of that planet, but it has not properly signed the treaty with the New Republic, so we shouldn't send troops to help them. Dollar Store Mr. Miyagi says, this sounds like an Imperial way of thinking. Yeah, I know this scene is trying to paint Lesbian Haircut as evil, but everything she said is correct. The New Republic just can't get involved with every single planetary conflict. It would greatly weaken them, and their priority should be to protect their own planets first. Now, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Disney actually wrote a strong, independent female Star Wars character that I like. She's even a modern woman who's a villain, and not even a sympathetic one. So, Mickey, I'm gonna applaud you here. Good job. You wrote a female villain that I actually like. In fact, I think you wrote her so well that I completely agree with her. Ho-ho! Thanks, Jar! So Dollar Store Mr. Miyagi, finds out where the Mandos are. How did he know where their secret hideout was? Well, it's because he was old friends with the droid R5, and R5 gave him their location. Wow, there have been a lot of super convenient things that happened for the plot to move forward in Disney Star Wars, but this is one of the biggest ones yet. So out of all the droids in the entire galaxy, Mando just so happened to buy one that Luke Skywalker himself refused to buy, and that droid just so happened to know someone that Mando knew. And can astromech droids really send out signals across the galaxy? In episode 2, Mando lost connection with this thing just because it went into a cave. And the worst part is, this is easily fixable. The X-Wing pilot could have been like, yo Mando, I need some help, where are you and your group at? And Mando could have given him their location. By the way, the pilot is unarmed, holding his hands out, but the Mandalorians are like, oh my god, he's moved! Oh, what's happening? Oh, I'm so scared! Greatest warriors in the galaxy after the Force users, folks! He asked the Mandalorians to fight against the pirates. He's not gonna fight against the pirates himself, but he did ask the Mandos to do it for him, but he did it in a really nice way. But according to Mando, they can't help because, they don't even have ships. Then how did you guys get there in the first place? Did you all hitchhike? And what about that kick-ass battle station you guys had in Book of Boba Fett? We cut to Apollo Creed, who's walking with the townspeople that fled the city before it was attacked, and wait, why are there so few of them? There's only like 4 dozen of them, and that was a small city. Disney, you have spent money on CGI food, just green screen in a few more people. The Mandalorians leave to fight the pirates in their ships. All 2 of them. Now, for how much time has passed, I'm pretty sure that city is a pile of rubble by now. The X-Wing pilot got the distress signal. He went to Coruscant. Then he went to meet the Mandalorians. Then the Mandalorians chatted about what they should do for a few minutes or several hours, and then they went to the planet. Yeah, this is like the episode of the alien pterodactyl thing all over again. Now, the battle between the Mandalorians and the pirates, for the most part, is pretty good. Although I will say the Mandalorians are struggling way more than they actually should. For saving the town, the Mandalorians now have a new place to stay. And then we get to, the absolute worst part of the episode. Blacksmith Lady tells Bo-Katan to remove her helmet, and she does. And then she says, this is the way. Yep, Bo-Katan is immune to the rules because she's the chosen one who's going to unite all the Mandalorian tribes. Don't get me wrong, the helmet rule is an absolutely stupid rule, but it was still a rule that the writers set up in their own story, and now they're going against the rules they've set up for themselves, just like all modern writers do for some reason. But I guess she is the chosen one. After all, she does have a uterus. The episode ends with the X-Wing pilot discovering that Moff Gideon escaped, because of course he did. God, I can't believe every single episode has gotten worse and worse. And from what I've heard, the next episode, episode 6, is the worst one out of all of them. Let's find out if the rumors are true. Now, Mandalorian already set the bar pretty low, but this episode was so bad that those who have defended the show up to this point finally said, wow, this show is terrible. terrible! This episode has not one, not two, but 3 celebrity cameos. The episode starts with Bo-Katan's old Mandalorian group in a, wow, Imperial Star Destroyer. It looks like these guys did really good for themselves without her leadership. They're attempting to rescue a Mal Calamari prince, but it turns out that the prince wasn't captured. He just ran away with the ship captain, his lover. Yep, this scene is entirely pointless and it takes up a whole 4 minutes of the episode. I'm not joking. Anyways, we cut to our main character, Bo-Katan. Oh, and I guess Mando and Baby Yoda are also there. Yeah, this is the episode where it was made clear that she's the new main character. It's no longer the Mandalorian, it's the Woman-Dalorian. They fly to a dome city on an independent planet. Oh, and by the way, if you thought the Holdo maneuver completely broke the rules of the Star Wars universe, well, this episode has something even worse. The people of the city completely take control of Bo-Katan's ship. She has completely lost control over it, and she can only sit back as it lands. And no, they're not using a tractor beam or anything like that. This city just hacked into her ship and now they have full control over it. Keep in mind, this is a vessel designed for war. Can they do this to other ships like Star Destroyers or maybe even the Death Star? Now the city is, the Outer Rim's only direct democracy. Now, I'm not here to argue if direct democracy is a good government system or a bad government system. I certainly don't think it's communism like a few people think it is for some reason, I don't know. But I will say I kind of find it funny that it's pushed so much by the media in Hollywood. It's almost as if that because they have the loudest voice that they can control what people vote for. But that's just a crazy conspiracy. But yeah, throughout this entire episode, the writers keep trying to push just how amazing direct democracy actually would be if we tried it. The planet also uses a lot of ex-Empire droids and a lot of ex-Trade Federation droids. Yeah, basically any government system would work if you had enough technology. Whether it's capitalism, communism, direct democracy, fascism, or whatever else you can think of, a good way to convince your audience that it's a good government system is to put a bunch of technology all over the place. Insert transhumanism meme here. After they land, Bo-Katan says, "I want to meet the other Mandalorians." And the leaders of the planet are like, well, before you do that, you have to do this side quest for us. And Bo-Katan is like, oh, come on now, do I have to? Mando snickers and says, welcome to my world. So they meet with the leaders of the planet, and remember when I told you about those celebrity cameos? Yep, they're played by Jack Black and Lizzo. They're married to one another. Well, I can see why they call him Jack Black now. I had a way more offensive joke, by the way, but my roommate told me not to say it. Baby Yoda jumps into Lizzo's arms, and I just gotta ask, why is Baby Yoda jumping around so much in season 3? Now, because the leader of the planet, Jack Black, is an ex-Empire officer, the planet is not allowed to have a military. So instead, they hire mercenaries and bounty hunters, and then Jack Black says that because they don't spend money on a military, they have more to spend on their citizens. Okay, let's break this down. First of all, spending money on mercenaries and bounty hunters is still spending money on a military. It's just not a permanent military. Second, this whole American perspective of, oh, if we cut back on the military, we could afford healthcare, free housing, and all this other stuff. Just so you know, despite America having the most expensive military in the world, the US government still spends more money on healthcare. Don't get me wrong, I think the US government should cut back on military spending, but doing that won't fix all our problems. So the side quest given to Bo-Katan and Mando is to investigate why some of the droids have been going rogue. They go and see our third celebrity cameo, Christopher Lloyd, aka Doc Brown from Back to the Future. Okay, now the Back to the Future movies were a very good trilogy. But aside from those movies, Christopher Lloyd has been in a lot of garbage movies and TV shows. One of the worst animated movies ever made, Food Fight, Baby Geniuses, and The Oogie Loves, just to name a few. And of course, there's a Mandalorian Season 3 as well. Mr. Lloyd, I don't know who your agent is, but you should fire them. Luke, you gotta go back with me. Where? Back to the future. Wait a minute, Doc, what happens in the future? Do me and Leia become total assholes or something? Yes. Oh God, we gotta go now! Doc Brown is the one who's in charge of all the droids, and he has a big red button which can shut them all off. Wow, this would work in a Star Wars cartoon, but not a live action show. Apparently, he's not allowed to shut the droids off because the people voted against it. But wait, the droids are attacking people. It seems like direct democracy isn't a perfect system or something. And why did the people vote against this? Well, it's because if the droids are shut off, the people will have to do all the work themselves, and they've relied on droids to do everything for them for too long. Yep, direct democracy is a perfect system as long as the people have a workforce of slaves, I mean robots, to do everything for them. Bo-Katan and Mando get a list of the droids that are malfunctioning from a Ugnaught. Yep, that's what an Ugnaught is. And now I understand why in the Yo Mama fight of Robot Chicken Star Wars, one of the insults was your mother's so ugly she put the Ugg in Ugnaught. Mando goes to a line of super battle droids carrying a bunch of stuff, and he starts kicking them one by one. Okay, wow, seems like he's back to being a robophobe. Eventually he kicks the right one, and it starts booking it. Man, I've never seen a super battle droid run that fast. Oh my god, look at the box it just threw. That droid is super strong. Okay, maybe that box was light, and oh my god, it just crushed that car. You see, this is a battle droid. This is a super battle droid. But this super battle droid has ascended to the next level and went even further beyond. Let's just call it a super battle droid 3. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand that super battle droids are pretty tough, but this is like the strongest on-screen appearance we've ever seen of one. It's gonna take something like the Darksaber to take this thing down, and oh, Bo-Katan just shot in the back. Okay, so super battle droids are heavily resistant to blaster fire. That's why the clone troopers' rifles were so big. It was to deal with these things. So the writers made this super battle droid faster than it should be, stronger than it should be, but also gave it less durability than it should have. Holy shit, they got everything wrong about it. Oh, and by the way, earlier when it ran away, Bo-Katan shot at it but missed, hit a different super battle droid a few times, and it barely flinched. Yeah, it's like those scenes from Kenobi where the writers establish something then immediately forget about it. Bo-Katan somehow reaches into the droid's pockets and pulls out this spark pad that has an address to a bar. They go to the droid bar, and Mando starts threatening everyone in there. Holy shit, I was joking before, he really is back to being robophobic. All his character development from the season 1 finale has been reversed. They meet up with the bartender in the back who tells them that the drink that the droids have been drinking is a special lubricant that has nanobots in it that repair code. That's not how code works. And I think this is the first time anything like this has been mentioned in the Star Wars universe, and it purely exists so that the plot can happen. It turns out that all the droids that got corrupted all drank from the same batch of nanoparticle fuel. They take the super battle droid and extract some fluid from it, and oh my god, a lesbian haircut really let herself go. Okay, I'm joking, that's not lesbian haircut, that's a different character. It turns out that the one behind the corrupting nanoparticles is, oh my god, it's Doc Brown. A droid in the room gets corrupted, starts shooting lasers all over the place, and Mando cuts it in half with a Darksaber. Okay, that was pretty cool. They confront Doc Brown and he threatens to press the button, which will revert all the droids to their original programming, and they'll start attacking everyone around them. Wait a second, I thought it was established that button would only turn them off. How can it? Oh wait, of course. The writers just forgot their own rules again. But why is Doc Brown doing this? Well, he reveals that he's a separatist and that he's a follower of Count Dooku. Yep, direct democracy is a good system as long as none of those freedom-loving libertarians try to ruin it. People in the Empire can change, but not those greedy capitalist pigs. Bo-Katan shoots him with a stun dart. Good thing he fell backwards and not forwards, because he would have hit that button. Anyways, Doc Brown is exiled, Baby Yoda is knighted for some reason, and Bo-Katan and Mando are presented with the key to the city. In other words, they unlocked fast travel to this place. They finally meet up with the other Mandalorians, and Bo-Katan challenges the leader to a duel. She of course wins, and don't get me wrong, she's an incredibly skilled Mandalorian. But we all know if she was some low-ranking Mandalorian with no training, she would have still kicked his ass because she's a whammon. Some people did complain about her beating him in a fist fight, but the thing is, she's an incredibly strong woman. I know there are some people out there who say things along the lines of, oh, a woman could never beat a man in a fist fight. Now, while it is true that, on average, men are stronger than women, I'm a pretty strong guy. I hit the gym bare minimum 4 days a week. I've pretty much reached the max on all the machines, and I can leg press over 1,200 pounds. But I know at least 3 women who go to my gym who could absolutely kick my ass. I'm just bringing this up because of, well, a handful of the people who watch my videos believe stuff like that. Anyways, despite Bo-Katan winning, the Mandalorians tell her that they won't follow her because she doesn't have the Darksaber. Even though this guy doesn't have the Darksaber, but they still followed him, and he lost to a girl. But then Mando chimes in and says, I have the Darksaber and I'm giving it to her, so now you guys can follow her. Then Bo-Katan says, whoa, but Mando, that's the Darksaber. You can't simply gift it to someone. It must be won through combat. Mando replies, you know that big crab droid that kicked my ass only because it had the drop on me? Well, that thing defeated me, so it became the owner. And then you defeated it, making you the owner. Yeah, apparently you can become the owner of the Darksaber if you sneak attack the guy who has it. Yeah, this logic is stupid and makes no sense. But it does explain why in episode 2 it was so heavy for him, yet so light for her. Hello, Editing Jar here again. It actually does not explain why it was so heavy for him because it was heavy before he got defeated by the crab droid. So the writer's excuse doesn't work, or maybe they just got the scenes mixed up, I don't know. But hang on, remember that one droid that was spinning around with all the lasers? Bo-Katan was cowering in fear of that thing, and then Mando sliced it in half with the Darksaber. So by that same logic, wouldn't that make him the rightful owner of the Darksaber? Hey, I got a great idea to fix this. What if Bo-Katan asked the Mandalorians to follow her and they said, we will only do it if you have the Darksaber? And then Mando says, well, I have the Darksaber. Bo-Katan, do you want to challenge me in order to get this weapon? Then we could have had a fight between her and Mando instead of this random Mandalorian. Anyway, she takes the Darksaber, ignites it, and yeah, that's where our episode ends. She has now officially became the new main character. Wow. Just wow. When people were telling me that this was the worst episode of The Mandalorian, they were not joking. In fact, I would say this episode is almost as bad as Kenobi episode 4. It's a close second, don't get me wrong, but it's still not as bad as that episode was. Well, we got the worst one out of the way, folks, and there's just 2 more episodes to go. I think I can make it through this. So episode 7 of Mandalorian Season 3 is unlike any episode of this season we've seen yet, because it's not mostly filler. Finally we have some plot. Don't get me wrong, the episode still completely sucks, but at least we have some plot. Now some people will claim that this is an actual good episode of The Mandalorian. Now they say that for 2 reasons. The smaller of the 2 is that this episode is action-packed. And the much greater reason is, well, they saw the episode before this one. Yeah, it's just like when people say Kenobi episode 5 was the best one. It's because they were comparing it to episode 4 and it also had a lot of action in it. The episode starts off in, Blade Runner. Apparently we didn't get enough of it in Andor. Lesbian haircut meets up with a probe droid and it makes a hologram of Gus, Moff Gideon. She tells him about the Mandalorians planning to retake Mandalore. Wow, the New Republic is pretty bad at keeping an eye on ex-Empire soldiers. Like, wouldn't their security system alert them to a probe droid being on their planet? Moff Gideon walks through the laser walls from Phantom Menace. No, I don't know why he has those in his ship. And, whoa, are those a new type of stormtroopers? You know what? Just for those guys, this is the best episode of Season 3 yet. Like, stormtroopers in Beskar armor is just so cool. Moff Gideon enters a meeting with a bunch of other Empire warlords. They name drop Admiral Hux and also Project Necromancer. I hate that this show has to lead into the sequel trilogy. Oh yeah, and for all you Thrawn fans, Captain Pellaeon is also there. Apparently the Mandalorians could pose a threat. I mean, don't get me wrong, they're really strong warriors, but there's less than 100 of them. We cut to the Mandalorians that love to wear their helmets, meeting up with the other Mandalorians that don't wear their helmets all the time. They are at odds with each other, like the Crips and the Bloods, but they all know the way. Apollo Creed also shows up with the IG-88 droid that thinks he's an IG-11 droid. He has been repurposed to be used as a mech suit by Baby Yoda. Holy shit, this is stupid. It's a droid. It wasn't designed to be piloted like a Gundam. And Baby Yoda is, well, you know, a baby. How can he pilot this thing? And no, there's not a training montage off screen. Literally, right after getting it, he uses it to steal some food. So the 2 groups of Mandalorians unite into one, and they go to take back the planet Mandalore. On the planet, they come across land pirates? No, it's actually another group of Mandalorians who have been surviving on this dead world this entire time. No, I do not know how. Oh, they're here for plot convenience because, of course, they offer the Mandalorians a ride to the Great Forge, the thing they were looking for. Yep, it's another super convenient thing that happened for the plot to move forward. Bo-Katan says that Mandalore is too powerful for any enemy to defeat. I think you guys were pretty defeated when the Empire invaded. Mando tells Bo-Katan just how amazing and perfect she is, because of course he does. Later on, two Mandalorians get into a fight over a board game, and Bo-Katan shows off her skills as a leader by not doing anything. Yep, she's just standing there, menacingly. Well, luckily, Baby Yoda and his, mech droid manages to stop the two. I mean, he could have used the Force, but I guess the writers thought this was way more stupid. During their journey, they come across this massive monster, and they sail into it. And they're going towards it, and they're going towards it, and finally they turn the ship. Oh, it was too late. That thing just destroyed their ship. Wow, these guys are stupid. They take shelter in a nearby cave, and guess what? Yep, that's right. The cave leads them to the exact thing they were looking for. It's another super convenient thing that happened for the plot to move forward. My god, it's like Rise of Skywalker all over again.
They fly now? They fly now!
But then a bunch of Mandalorian stormtroopers show up. Not only do they have Beskar, but they also have jetpacks as well, making the "they fly now" line from Rise of Skywalker even more stupid.
They fly now!
I won't lie, all the action actually does make this the best episode out of Season 3 so far. Yeah, the durability of the Beskar armor tends to fluctuate a lot in this fight, and some of the moments of the fight are pretty stupid, but at least it's something happening. There's a part where a few of the Mandalorians walk into a trap, and they're all killed except for Mando. Bo-Katan is trapped on the other side of the door, unable to do anything. Apparently she forgot she had the Darksaber. There's only tension in this scene because she's not using it to cut through the door. Mando gets captured, and Moff Gideon, in his armor that makes him look like Darth Vader trying to cosplay as a Mandalorian, walks up to him. He monologues and decides to leave Mando alive? Wait, why? This guy has defeated you twice. Moff Gideon feels bad for Bo-Katan's stupidity and reminds her that she has the fucking Darksaber. The action is back on. The big Mandalorian tells the other Mandalorians to retreat because there's too many of them, and then he takes them all out by himself. I love the part where he knocks two jet troopers off a cliff. Apparently they forgot they had jetpacks. But then a few Red Royal Guards show up and they kill him. Oh, finally! At long last, we see those guys get a kill. I've been waiting forever to see them do that. Yes, the Red Guards get a lot more kills in the comics and video games, but I'm talking about on-screen kills. I think this might have been the first one they've ever got. And, yeah, that's where this episode ends. I'm sorry that my review of this episode has been my shortest one yet. It was just so action-packed that I didn't really have much to say, but I will say this, it's so far the best episode of Season 3 of The Mandalorian. It turns out that the fans were right, but it's still worse than any episode from Seasons 1 and 2. And now we only have one episode to go, Episode 8, the finale. Okay, so I just realized my review of just The Mandalorian Season 3 is already over an hour long. After I was no longer sick, this review was going by faster, but I still have another show to review after this one, and I want this video to be out in a timely manner, but I can already tell this is going to be my longest video yet. This episode of The Mandalorian Season 3 is the worst one yet. I had hoped that it would be better than Episode 7, but all the stupid episodes led up to this stupid finale, so I'm not shocked at all by it being the worst one. So far out of this entire season, what developments have happened? Well, Bo-Katan is now the leader of the shithole known as Mandalore, and, yeah, that's about it. Everything else has been reset. Mando is back to being a bounty hunter, he has Baby Yoda with him again, and Moff Gideon is also back. Wow, I can't wait for them to defeat him for the third time in a row. The episode starts with two Beskar troopers escorting their captured prisoner Mando. He tries to fight back, but they exploit the Mandalorian's one weakness, the fact that they don't wear armor on their neck. But luckily for Mando, IG-88, I mean IG-11, I mean Grogu piloting IG-11 takes them both out. And then he heals Mando by spraying vape into his face. Baby Yoda, he still has the helmet on. Now in the last episode, we saw Baby Yoda retreating with the rest of the Mandos, so how did he show up here to save Mando?
Well, it's a good question for another time.
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
We cut to Moff Gideon, who has a map that can track Baby Yoda and Mando. Oh my god, it even has a green dot for Baby Yoda. So apparently the Empire now has this tracking technology that can track enemies who are on their ship. Yep, Disney has introduced another piece of world-breaking technology. Apparently the Empire forgot they had this technology in The Force Awakens when Rey was trying to escape from Kylo, or when Chewie, Han, and Finn were sneaking onto their super Death Star, and in The Last Jedi when Rose, Finn, and the Codebreaker snuck aboard their capital ship, and again in Rise of Skywalker when Rey, Finn, Chewie, and Poe all snuck aboard that one ship to get the dagger back. Mando gets into contact with R5, and R5 hacks into the entire Empire base, because of course he does. Yep, the master control for the entire base is on some random ledge. But to give the Empire credit, at least they added in a little security for their master control. A few mouse droids! Oh, get away from our master control, you R2 looking motherfucker! The Mandalorian by the name of Wolves uses his jetpack to fly all the way to the Mandalorian ship, even though it was established in episode 3 that their jetpacks don't have a lot of fuel. I guess the writers forgot their own rules once again. Their plan is to abandon ship and use it as a decoy, while they all go down to the surface to help Bo-Katan. The Empire fleet looks, pretty small. I think you guys should use the bigger ship to take them all out instead of, you know, splitting up. Oh, and by the way, the Mandalorian smaller ships just fly right past the TIE fighters. They don't try to shoot them down or anything like that. Okay, to be fair, Woz is piloting the ship all by himself, sacrificing himself to save everyone else. I don't know why this stolen Imperial vessel doesn't have any shields on it, and I also don't know how he can control all these guns by himself. I guess all those computers and buttons behind him are just for decoration. I'm pretty sure if this ship was fully manned and all the other little ships were helping it fight, they could have easily taken out the Empire forces. So yeah, I woe for Woz because his sacrifice is clearly for nothing. So Mando shows up to the shield walls from Phantom Menace, and there's actually a reason why they're here. It turns out that he's gonna fight the Beskar troopers one set at a time. Even though he's unarmed and they could easily jump him all at once, they decide to handicap themselves to make the fight more fair for him. You know, I've made a lot of jokes about The Mandalorian being like a video game, but this is on a whole new level. It's like in Pokemon when trainers challenge you one at a time. And also, despite them wearing Beskar armor and him being unarmed, he takes them all out. Now, despite how bad this episode has been up to this point, we get to the jump the Cartarian moment. They get to a room full of Moff Gideon clones. Okay, so first of all, that's not how cloning works in Star Wars. Clones start off as babies and you have to raise them. Sure, you can speed up their aging process, but still, you have to train them. Yes, I understand in the Star Wars Extended Universe, cloning can work like this, but in the movie and show canon, it doesn't. And believe it or not, this is not even the worst part. It turns out this whole time, the reason why the Empire wanted Baby Yoda was to use the midichlorians in his cells to create Force-sensitive clones. Okay, so this is yet another piece of technology that is completely world-breaking. If you can just make clones that can use the Force, then why not just make an entire army of cloned Force users? But Jar, you need someone who's Force-sensitive in order to do it. That's just stupid. Before the Clone Wars, there was over 10,000 Jedis. They could have taken a few midichlorians from all of them and made an entire army of Force-sensitive clone troopers. Hell, they could have taken all the midichlorians from the dead ones, like Qui-Gon Jinn and Darth Maul. Better yet, Palpatine could have done this after Order 66. There was a whole bunch of dead Jedis. The Force has officially been broken. How has no one thought to do this up until now? I know why Disney is doing this is so they can bring back all the characters they killed off. This is even worse than the Holdo maneuver, but that being said, it's still not as bad as that fleet of Star Destroyers that all had Death Star cannons on them. And before someone says, well, these clones may have the ability to use the Force, but they still have to train to learn it, right? Throughout Disney Star Wars, we've been shown that Jedis don't need to train as much as they once did. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, how are the Mandalorians going to take on this army of Force users that also have Beskar armor? Well, Mando just presses a few buttons and they all blow up. So yeah, the writers could have taken out all this world-breaking technology and nothing would change. So yeah, the writers just immediately written themselves into a corner and then wrote themselves out of it with some plot convenience. So yeah, this did not need to be added in for the plot, but it was still added in to, I don't know, break how the Star Wars universe works. You know what? I'm gonna say it. The season 3 finale of The Mandalorian is even worse than Kenobi episode 4. Yeah, by itself that episode is actually worse, but this episode completely breaks how the Star Wars universe works. Anyways, Mando runs into Moff Gideon. He screams about how those clones were essential to his plans. Well, maybe you should have had them guarded better. Maybe you shouldn't have added in those shield walls from the Phantom Menace and had your troops attack him one at a time. Maybe you shouldn't have had the master control for your base on some random balcony. Maybe you shouldn't have had a self-destruct button to destroy all your clones. Maybe you should have prepared yourself more with your little mini-map on your ship that shows you where all your enemies are. And maybe, just maybe, you should have killed Mando when you had the chance! Gus calls in his, 3 Praetorian Red Guards. Bro, you could have also used those guys to defend your clones! We cut to the Mandalorians who find a cave system that, of course, leads to a whole bunch of life. Despite this being a dead world, I guess, life found a way or something. They meet up with the other group of Mandalorians, and then they have a big, epic air battle against all the Empire Beskar jet troopers. Remember how it was established in episode 3 that their jetpacks had a very limited amount of fuel? Well, forget about that. They have fuel for days. Not only does that kind of ruin this battle for me, but there's also just way too much CGI. And of course, the durability of Beskar is completely inconsistent in this fight. That being said, I always wanted a battle like this in Star Wars. I just, wish it wasn't so poorly done. Moff Gideon and Mando fight mano a mano, but this time Moff Gideon has Beskar armor, and he's like way stronger for some reason. So let me get this straight. Mandalorians don't use melee weapons all that often, and we've seen them train in hand-to-hand combat lots of times. Moff Gideon had the Darksaber, and he could have only gotten it if he defeated the previous owner in combat. So he presumably had a lot of training in sword combat, especially after he got the Darksaber. Yet he loses a sword duel to Mando, but beats him in hand-to-hand combat? Okay, but even though he's kicking Mando's ass, he decides to call in his Red Praetorian Guards. Kind of seems like you should have done that when your clones were being destroyed. They start hitting Mando with their weapons, but they don't seem to be able to penetrate through his Beskar armor. Even though in the last episode they were able to penetrate another Mandalorian's Beskar armor, but the writers have never cared about their own rules that they set up for themselves before, so why would they care now? They finally have the chance to execute him, but then IG-88, IG-11, Baby Yoda piloting IG-11 shows up and spams the no button. And despite these guys being in presumably Beskar armor and this thing having no guns on it, they decide to leave Mando and chase after this thing. Guys, it would only take 2 seconds to slice off his head. What are you doing? They chase Baby Yoda into a separate room, destroy his mech suit. But then, Baby Yoda starts jumping around all over the place, because of course he does. He's been doing that all season. Just so you guys know, Praetorian Red Guards are the best of the Empire, handpicked by the Emperor himself, and they can't even kill one little Force-sensitive toddler that's not even youngling level. We cut back to Mando, who completely gets his ass kicked by Moff Gideon. It seems like all hope is lost, but then our main character, Bo-Katan, comes in to save the day. Yep, it turns out that the reason why Moff Gideon is suddenly stronger than Mando is so that he could be saved by our main character, a Mandalorian. Mando's big bad that he has been fighting against for 3 seasons is now her villain to defeat. Bo-Katan takes out her Darksaber. Moff Gideon pulls out his own melee weapon. They start fighting and, oh my god, the Darksaber was just destroyed. Good going, Bo-Katan. Mando was able to defeat this guy without breaking this thing. Well, now that the most powerful lightsaber is broken, how are the Mandos going to choose a leader? Okay, maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh. After all, lightsabers have been repaired before. Let's just hope the writers remember that that's a thing. Baby Yoda is about to be killed by the Praetorian Guards, but then his daddy Mando shows up and saves him. But he already lost to these guys before, so of course he starts getting his ass kicked. Oh man, this fight is so terribly choreographed. But luckily for Mando, his son uses the Force and saves him. Yep, he just got saved twice in the span of less than 5 minutes. A male being saved by a woman is one thing, but being saved by a toddler is so much more embarrassing. The Mandalorian's big ship takes too much damage, and it starts to go down, but Axe Woes decides to pull a Holdo and crashes it into the Empire's base. It's a good thing that Rose wasn't there to knock him out of the way. Oh no, wait, he doesn't pull a Holdo. He manages to escape right before impact. Mando shows up to help Bo-Katan fight against Moff Gideon. Oh my god, a man just saved a woman. Finally, at long last it has happened, and oh no, wait. The ship explosion consumes Moff Gideon in fire and kills him. So just like in Breaking Bad, the actor for Gus died in the same way. He was consumed in the flames of an explosion. Also, it's pretty convenient that the explosion consumed him and stopped just short of them. But I don't see a body, so who knows? Maybe he's still alive, he is in Beskar armor, or maybe one of his clones survived or something. By the way, plenty of people have done the math, and that ship crashing into that base would have made a much greater explosion. But of course, the explosion had to be the perfect size for plot convenience. Oh no, wait, never mind, that explosion is getting bigger. Our heroes are going to be... Oh wait, Baby Yoda puts up a force bubble shield and protects them from the flames. Triumphant music starts playing. The writers want you to know that this is a big and powerful scene. But all I can think is, holy shit, this is the most powerful use of the Force we have seen yet. And yes, that does include Kenobi Episode 5 when Darth Vader stopped that big ship from flying away. By the way, according to the logic of Episode 6, Axe-Woz would technically now be the leader of Mandalore. Because Bo-Katan had the Darksaber, she lost him off Gideon, and this guy, by complete accident, killed him. Anyways, the battle is now over, and we cut to that one Mandalorian kid being baptized. Wait a second, wasn't his dad killed in the last episode? Well, guess this kid's an orphan now. Imagine receiving the news that your father is dead, and then you have to get baptized. Also, at long last, Mando finally says that he's Baby Yoda's father, and Baby Yoda's name is changed to Din Grogu. Mando's name is Din Djarin, so shouldn't it be Grogu Djarin? I understand in some cultures the surname comes first, but the Mandalorian Fett family has the surname come last. Boba Fett, Jango Fett. So I guess the writers are just breaking established rules once again. The season finally ends with Mando meeting up with the pilot, Dollar Store Mr. Miyagi. Mando says that he wants to do bounty hunting for the New Republic on a case-by-case basis, but Dollar Store Mr. Miyagi tells him he can't authorize bounties, so Mando tells him to keep it off the books. Then, how is he gonna pay you, dumbass? I don't think a pilot's salary can cover what you do. And yes, I noticed Dave Filoni in the background, you don't have to tell me in the comments. Mando goes back to Navarro. Apollo Creed tells Mando that he has a home set up for him. IG-11 is rebuilt as the marshal for the town. And just before the credits start rolling, we see Baby Yoda torturing a frog. My god, I can't believe this was my longest episode review yet. This whole season was just wow. I thought Kenobi was bad, but this is somehow even worse. Let's just hope that the next show I'm reviewing after this one, Ahsoka, is at least a little bit better. But so far, this is the absolute worst show I have reviewed yet. She-Hulk was worse than Twilight, The Witcher Blood Origin was worse than that, Kenobi was even worse somehow, but this show just comes in and says, hold my blue milk. What makes this even worse is that I enjoyed season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian. Aside from Andor, it was the one thing Disney Star Wars did right, and this just comes along and destroys it. And now I have to review Ahsoka. I just want you guys to know that I liked Ahsoka as a character in Star Wars The Clone Wars. I really hope they don't ruin her like Mando. Anyways, that's enough on The Mandalorian. I'm gonna review the Ahsoka show now. Now, if you've seen my first really long Star Wars video, then you would know that I'm a fan of Ahsoka from Star Wars The Clone Wars. Now, don't get me wrong, I did find her annoying at first, but over time I did start to like her. Like I said before, watching her grow from an annoying kid to a kind and wise leader gave me this feeling I haven't felt since watching Gohan grow. Ironically, a lot of the dislikes I got underneath that video were from both Star Wars The Clone Wars haters and fans. The fans of the show heard me say I didn't like it at first, so they disliked, left their angry comments, and left. It's very funny when they say, oh come on, it gets better later on, you should have kept watching. I did. You should have taken your own advice and kept watching my video. And of course, people who hate the show heard me say I didn't like it at first, and they kept on watching until they heard me say I liked it later on. I guess the old saying is true. People who stand in the middle of the road tend to get run over. But the point I'm trying to make is, well, I like the character of Ahsoka, and when I saw the trailers for this show, I knew Disney was going to ruin her. Now don't get me wrong, I've heard that there's people who actually like this show. Kind of fishy that there seems to be fewer and fewer of them every single day, just like with Star Wars The Last Jedi and the Kenobi show. But I was willing to give this show a chance. That being said, I started not liking it pretty early on. How early on? When I saw the opening text! Disney, how could you not even have gotten that right? It's 2D text! It's going up! Opening Star Wars text has a 3D look to it, and it slowly moves into the background as it disappears. And why is it red? You guys couldn't even get the color right!
Oh, come on now, Jaw, you're being a big baby. This is such a nitpick.
The thing is, we haven't even started the episode yet! Sure, this small little detail didn't make me immediately think that the entire show was going to be trash, but to quote Han Solo, I have a bad feeling about this. If the showrunners aren't putting effort into something as small as the opening text, then I don't have much faith for the rest of the show. Anyways, the show starts with a New Republic vessel flying through space. The captain is a human who possesses a Y chromosome. Gee, I wonder if he's going to do something really stupid then get killed. They're currently transporting a prisoner by the name of Morgan Elsbeth. If you don't remember who she is, she's the woman from Mandalorian Season 2 with the Beskar staff that Ahsoka and Mando defeated. Yep, Disney Star Wars is still continuing the tradition of trying to make you care about characters that were in like one episode. Anyways, the Republic vessel is approached by clearly an Empire transport vehicle. Okay, so I've made a lot of jokes about how stupid the characters in Kenobi were, but the characters in Ahsoka outdo them all in just this scene. So the captain asks the approaching vessel for a security code, and then they receive an old Jedi clearance code. This one guy says, "They're Jedi." Bro, that's super unlikely. They were almost all wiped out during Order 66. But the captain is a little bit smarter. He doesn't believe they're Jedi, but only a little smarter because he does something so incredibly stupid. The vessel approaching them requests to see the prisoner, and then the captain says, "I'm calling their bluff," and he lets them on board. That's not calling their bluff at all, it's the opposite. So the captain knows this is a trap, and he's on purposely falling for the trap. He could have shot them down or, not let them come aboard. Keep in mind, they're escorting a highly dangerous prisoner. The New Republic and Ahsoka are even more stupid than the Empire was in Kenobi Episode 4, and that's saying something. I'm less than 2 minutes in, and I'm already starting to think that this is the worst Disney Star Wars episode yet. But maybe I'm being a little bit too harsh. He does bring security with him. All 6 of them. At least one of them is a non-human, so that's a plus, but I don't think that Mal Calamari can get his hands around that gun. His webbing is clearly going to make it impossible for him to pull the trigger. The captain along with his 6 security guys get into their positions. Right in front of the ship. They don't spread out or anything. I guess they just want to make it easier for their enemies to defeat them or something. The ship opens up, and out come 2 people in dark robes. Well, the captain and the crew already know about the Jedi, so they know about the Sith, right? Right? Oh my god, you can even clearly see the lady's lightsaber. The captain then walks into lightsaber range and says, "I don't believe you guys are actually Jedi." Then maybe you shouldn't have let them on board, dumbass! And also, the 2 Dark Jedis, or Sith, or Inquisitors, or whatever you want to call them, are also really stupid for thinking this plan would actually work. Their plan only succeeded because the captain was a colossal idiot. In other words, it's yet another super convenient thing that happened for the plot to move forward. And before you say, "Oh, well, in Return of the Jedi, Luke, Han, and Leia also used an old Imperial code to get through a blockade." Yeah, the Empire fell for it, and that was kind of dumb of them. But these guys knew it was a trap. And before you say, "Well, he doesn't know they're actual Force users with actual lightsabers," even if they were normal humans with guns, they could have shot him. He's the captain. They could have even held him hostage. The captain says, "You guys should have surrendered when you had the chance." The Sith lady pulls out a lightsaber and starts killing the 6 guards. The captain tries to shoot her with his gun, but then the male Sith traps him with the Force. By the way, the male Sith's name is Balin, and the Sith lady is his apprentice. Now, something I should point out is their lightsabers are orange or copper colored. No, I don't know why. Balin kills the captain, and then his apprentice goes up to the bridge to kill the co-captain. The co-captain starts shooting at her as the rest of her men do nothing. Yeah, they're just sitting there at their computer screens. Okay. Guys, there's someone in here trying to kill you. Tweeting is not a priority right now. Balin is walking down the corridor as the guards are shooting at him, and oh my god! Look at how he's deflecting the blaster bolts! He's like an old video game character! Every other time we've seen Jedis deflect blaster bolts, they're swinging their lightsabers around all over the place, but he's just holding it still in random places, hoping that his enemies shoot it. I feel so bad for the effects team. I'm sure they're trying their best to make this scene look good, but they're not given anything good to work with. My god, it's like Kenobi all over again. He force chokes, then pushes one of the guards, and then he slices down the other 2, and oh my god, look at that one on the ground. He just has a lightsaber wound in his leg. How did that kill him? We've seen 2 people get stabbed through the torso with a lightsaber in Kenobi, and both of them lived, but this guy gets nicked in the leg and he dies? What? I hope in this same episode we don't later on see someone get stabbed through the guts with a lightsaber and live, because that would be stupid. Balin, of course, manages to get Morgan out of her cell. A man saved a woman in modern Star Wars. Gotta be honest, I didn't see that coming. She tells him that Ahsoka is looking for Thrawn, and then we get our title screen. I'm gonna be honest here, I like the font on Ahsoka's name. We cut to Ahsoka, who's walking, and she's walking, and she's walking. Then she stops at this very dirty symbol on the ground and tries to brush some dirt off of it. Lady, just use the Force and push all the dust off of it at once! She uses her 2 lightsabers to cut a hole through the ground, and I'm not gonna lie, the way she does this is pretty cool. Ahsoka lands in the deep dark ancient room and starts staring at stuff. And some more stuff, and some more stuff. Boy, there's a lot of padding in this episode, isn't there? Then she caresses a pillar. For those of you who don't get the joke, the pillar is a metaphor for penis. Okay, she's actually turning it to unlock this Zelda puzzle or something. Okay, I lied, it's not a Zelda puzzle, it's way more simple than that. Yeah, I'm sure many people have tried to solve this puzzle before, but Ahsoka was the first one, even though it's 100 times more simple than a Rubik's Cube. And the best part is, she turns even more pillars. My god, there's so much padding in this episode. Like, don't get me wrong, the temple looks absolutely amazing. The effects artist did a really good job on it. But I can't imagine anyone finding this entertaining, like, at all. Eventually, Ahsoka finds the golden ball, and it is yet another MacGuffin that the show will be all about.
Wowee, what an original premise for Star Wars!
As long as we ignore The Force Awakens, The Rise of Skywalker, and just a whole bunch of other stuff. Ahsoka jumps back through the hole, and she's approached by a droid that kind of looks like one of those General Grievous bodyguards. I believe they're called IG-100s. And there's another one, and actually there's a whole bunch of them. Oh boy, you know, this show has sucked up to this point, but I bet we're gonna get a really cool action scene. And wait a second, why did she jump back down the hole? Oh my god, she's cutting holes underneath them. This is like something out of Looney Tunes. Like, on the one hand, I am happy she's using strategy, but this is really goofy. After making 3 of them fall into holes, she takes on the last 2, and the lightsaber fight is fine. It's not the worst lightsaber fight I've seen, but it's not the best either. After she defeats the 2 of them, the other 3 finally get out of the holes, and then they start their self-destruct sequence. Aw man, they started their self-destruct sequence too late. She's getting so far away, there's no way that blast is gonna— oh my god! Did they have nukes inside of them or something? This is a big explosion! If they wanted to kill her, they should have self-destructed sooner. But here's the thing, these droids are here to take the map from her, so if that explosion hit her, wouldn't the map be destroyed? The better the technology gets in the Star Wars universe, the more stupid people become. Ahsoka, of course, escapes the explosion, and she flies away with the droid lightsaber smith from the cartoon, a character who's even older than Yoda. Ahsoka meets with Hera Syndulla, the green girl from Star Wars Rebels, which I've never seen. By the way, she's played by Ian McGregor's wife, the actor for Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I thought that was pretty interesting. Anyways, she's a new Republic general, and she informs Ahsoka on what just transpired.
God damn it, I just captured that woman and you already let her get away?
Ahsoka shows her the golden ball, and apparently it can lead them to the location of, Grand Admiral Thrawn. Okay, I thought that temple was a lot more ancient than it really was. Apparently, if they can find Thrawn, they can also find Ezra. No, not Ezra Miller. This guy from the cartoon. Now, unfortunately for them, the ball is locked, and Ahsoka can't figure out how to open it. It turns out you just have to turn the spinny things on it. Yeah, it's no more complicated than the puzzle she just solved. Honestly, a child could figure this out. We cut to some Robert E. Lee looking guy giving a speech. Sabine was supposed to show up, but she didn't, and yeah, that's this scene. It's only here to pad out this episode even more. We cut to Sabine, who's driving down a very empty road while she's listening to music, and honestly, she feels completely out of place in Star Wars. Kind of like those cyborgs in Book of Boba Fett, but unlike them, she's a major character. Now, in my first really long Star Wars video, I said that Admiral Holdo was the first human with unnaturally colored hair. A few people complained in the comments saying, no, Sabine is the first human in Star Wars with unnaturally colored hair. First of all, in that same video, I said I haven't seen Star Wars Rebels yet. But whether she was the first or Holdo was the first, I don't care. It's completely out of place in Star Wars. Like, she would fit better in something like Cyberpunk Edgerunners, but not in Star Wars. Also, it's kind of funny that both Holdo and Sabine decided to color their hair purple. Not blue, not red, not orange, not white, not pink, but purple. They both picked the same color. Anyways, 2 cops try to pull her over. She says no. Then they try to block the road, and she does this sick maneuver to get past them. And then the other cop is like, oh, that was pretty cool. I get that the writers are trying to show that Sabine is a really cool character, but this just feels so out of place in Star Wars. It's also kind of a really pointless scene, like, why did she skip the ceremony in the first place? She arrives at her home and, of course, she has an alien cat thing. And then she watches this hologram that she presumably has seen before. Kind of seems like a stupid reason to skip out on a ceremony. Also, the actor for Ezra is just so bad. There is like no emotion in his voice at all. By the way, I really don't like Sabine. She feels like such an OC. She's both Mandalorian and Jedi, and she has a sick red motorcycle. We cut to our little trio of Sith who are at the location where Ahsoka got the golden ball. We learn that Morgan Elsbeth is a witch, one of the Night Sisters. If you have watched the cartoons, then you would know what that is, but if you've only seen the live action stuff, you're probably very confused. Hey guys, just gonna take a break from my review real quick to say that I got a bunch of acoustic foam for my walls. So hopefully from this point in my review onwards, you'll hear slightly less of an echo. Anyways, let's get back to the review. Ahsoka meets up with Sabine. Ahsoka shows her the golden ball, and then she tells Sabine, I think I might know a way to find Ezra. Sabine then stares at the ball, and then they stand around a room doing nothing. I swear this episode would only be 20 minutes long without the padding. Eventually, Ahsoka tells her that she believes that Sabine is the only one who can read the map. Sabine just, turns a few of the circles and unlocks the map. Yeah, so much for the only person who can unlock the map. Honestly, it seems like a child could figure this out. Eventually, Sabine runs off with the map. She pretty much tells Ahsoka straight to her face that she's going to do that, and Ahsoka just leaves her to talk to the droid, who just dumps a bunch of exposition. We get to the scene from the trailer where Ahsoka says, Anakin never finished my training, I walked away from him. No, you walked away from the whole Jedi Order because they tried to execute you. Now, I know that a few fans of the show are going to say, oh, come on, Jar, she didn't just turn the ball. She had to look at the hologram map of the temple, until she learned that there was a secret symbol hidden within it. There's only a handful of combinations this ball can have. She didn't need to do all of this, she just needed to turn it a few times. She unlocks the map and it shows her the way. But Sabine is jumped by two HK droids, who physically restrain her, even though they clearly have blasters on them. You know, you can set those things to stun, right? Sabine grabs the gun the droid wasn't using, and shoots it in the foot to get away. But then the Sith apprentice shows up, and her and Sabine have a pretty goofy lightsaber duel. The duel ends with the Sith apprentice stabbing Sabine right through the gut. But much like the third sister from Kenobi, who survived being stabbed by a lightsaber, Sabine also survives because just like the third sister, she has 2 X chromosomes. And that's the end of episode 1. My god, this show is awful. I don't know why anyone likes it at all. But who knows, maybe the first episode was just the worst one and it gets better from here. But I doubt it. Episode 2 of Ahsoka starts with Sabine waking up in a hospital. Yeah, she survived being stabbed straight through with a lightsaber because of course she did. I brought this up in my review of Kenobi, but lightsabers are hot enough to melt metal. I'm not a biologist by any means, but I'm pretty sure that the melting point for metal is a lot higher than the boiling point for water, and humans are mostly made out of water. So being stabbed straight through with a lightsaber would definitely kill you. And for the people who are stupid enough to bring up, oh, what about Luke Skywalker? He got his hand sliced off, so why don't you have a problem with that? 1, the lightsaber was in Sabine's body for way longer, and 2, it was in the middle of her body. Like, I already knew that Sabine was going to survive. I just didn't think that they would reveal that she survived literally at the start of the episode. That doesn't build up any tension at all. So yeah, just like how J.J. Abrams did a fake out death with Chewie, Dave Filoni did a fake out death with Sabine. Sabine yells out that the droids took the map. Ahsoka tells her to calm down, but then Sabine yells out, you don't understand, I unlocked it. Good for you, you unlocked it, but I don't see how that matters because now it's in the hands of, you know, the person who gave the location of the temple to Ahsoka. Even if the map is somehow super difficult to unlock, that woman would definitely know how to unlock it herself. In other words, Sabine only unlocked the map because, well, it makes her character look smart. Now Ahsoka is taking what Sabine did disgustingly well. Like, don't get me wrong, she's a little angry with her, but, Savine literally stole the map from Ahsoka. A map that leads to the location of Admiral Thrawn, who is the biggest threat to the New Republic. Savine didn't just leave the toilet seat up. She did something that could lead to the deaths of billions, if not trillions of people. And before you say, oh, Ahsoka is just keeping her emotions under control, we'll get to that later. Anyways, we cut to our trio of Sith who go to, the Sith Stonehenge, I guess, and they put the ball on a pillar. Baylan looks up at, nothing, and then we cut to the title screen. Ahsoka goes to Savine's house, but then she's ambushed by an HK droid that she easily takes down. I don't know why this highly damaged droid thought it could take down a Jedi, but it gets an A for effort. Oh no, wait, it could have self-destructed and taken her out easily. Yep, it's another example of modern writing adding in something cool and then completely forgetting about it. Also, to make this scene even worse, this droid will be useful to Ahsoka and Savine because it can give them the location of the people who stole the ball. Wow, why didn't the villains bring this droid with them? Or, I don't know, make it blow itself up? In other words, this droid was only in Savine's house for one reason. It's because it's another super convenient thing that happened for the plot to move forward. The droid's head is brought to Savine, and she tries to hack into its memory banks to find the location of the Sith. Oh my god, this is just the Sith dagger from Rise of Skywalker all over again. Why are the Sith giving their assassins something that can lead to their location? I can't believe I just compared Dave Filoni to J.J. Abrams twice. But Savine has to be careful as she hacks this thing because if she gets the power levels wrong, the head could explode. Now, do they go to a safe location to do this? Of course not, they do it here and now. Imagine if it did explode in Savine, Ahsoka, and the ancient droid were all just killed. I guess bringing back Thrawn wasn't enough for Savine, she also has to kill one of the last remaining Jedis. No wonder why the First Order came to power. The New Republic is full of idiots. Now, if you're an actual hacker or just have some basic understanding of how coding works, then you have cringe whenever you see Hollywood portray how hacking works. But this hacking scene in Ahsoka is definitely the cringiest one I've ever seen. She's just pressing buttons on a little remote, trying to make the row of lights all green. The Fallout series represents how hacking works better than this. She even says at one point, it's encrypted. Yeah, that's kind of why you're trying to hack it. Throughout this hacking process, the droid keeps saying, oh, it's getting closer and closer to exploding. And right before it explodes, he just unplugs it. Bro, why were you nervous? You just had to pull one plug. And of course, in cliche fashion, Savine manages to guess the correct combination of buttons right at the last second. They learned that the droid was made on the planet of Corellia. So now instead of searching an entire galaxy, they just have to search an entire planet. I don't think that narrows it down by much. By the way, Corellia is a very important planet. I know in my solo review I called it a backwater planet, but I meant to say he was in a backwater city on the planet. That was my mistake. Savine says, let's get going. Then Ahsoka says, no, you need to stay behind and recover. Heh, no, I'm fine. I was only stabbed by something that can melt metal. God, I miss it when lightsabers were deadly weapons. Harris tells Savine she did good. No, she didn't. You guys are only in this predicament because of her. I love it when Savine says, you heard her. She doesn't want my help. Yeah, of course she doesn't. You up everything. We cut back to our trio of Sith. Morgan Elsbeth says that this ancient Stonehenge-looking place was not built by the Jedi, but by an ancient race from another galaxy. Oh my god, is she referring to the Jedi? I hate that they had to be introduced in a show this shitty. Morgan activates the map, and I have no idea why she had to do it in this location specifically. I mean, Savine got the same projection in her own home. You don't need to go to Stonehenge to activate Google Maps. Bringing it to this location just makes the map bigger. And that's it. It's like using your big TV to display Google Maps. Morgan hears voices in her head and then says, Thrawn calls to me across time and space. Oh no, are they introducing time travel in the Star Wars mythos? No, she just meant he's talking to her from another galaxy. There's no time travel involved. She deactivates the map and says that the Eye of Sauron, the Eye of Sauron, is on its way here. We cut to Ahsoka, who lands on the planet Corellia. She meets with the regional supervisor, Min Weaver. Now you might recognize this actor from the Netflix show Colony, and he's basically the exact same character he was in that show, because in that show he was also a regional supervisor, and he was collaborating with alien invaders, and in this show he's collaborating with the remnants of the Empire. Does this guy just get typecasted as regional supervisors who work with the enemy? But what is this guy supervising? Well, you know how in Andor they were repurposing old Republic vessels into new Empire vessels? Well, now they're doing the opposite. They're repurposing old Empire vessels into new Republic vessels. Okay, so I know that technology has advanced, but wouldn't it be easier just to use the old ships? I'm just picturing the workers on Corellia finally repurposing the last old Republic vessel into an Empire vessel, and then being told literally after they just finished that the Empire has fallen, and now they have to repurpose all the ships they just made into new Republic vessels. Oh yeah, and by the way, the former employees who worked under the Empire are now working on these new ships. Like, I understand they have the know-how, but you probably should keep an eye on these guys. Granted, that being said, they're not exactly former stormtroopers, they're just workers. Their loyalty is to the paycheck. When the regional supervisor is questioned on his loyalty, he says his loyalty is to his investors. But, who are your investors? He, pretty much just told you straight to your face that he's the villain. Elsbeth says to Ahsoka,
"Looks like reconnecting with Savine paid off."
Why? Because she knew the droid came from this planet? There would have been no need to come to this planet in the first place if she didn't lose the map. And also, just because she found the planet that this droid came from, it doesn't mean you're going to find the guy who made it. She tries to convince Ahsoka to bring Savine back on as an apprentice, but Ahsoka says she's not ready. Zadula asks, how will you know when she's ready? And Ahsoka retorts, when she doesn't steal my f***ing map, dooming the entire galaxy. I'm joking, of course. Ahsoka says you just know. Yeah, it turns out the way you know when someone's ready to be a Jedi apprentice is through a woman's intuition. Or who knows, maybe the writers just don't know what they're doing, so they couldn't come up with an explanation, even though dooming the entire galaxy sounds like a pretty good explanation. We cut back to Savine, who shows her lightsaber wound. I've had worse injuries from getting shot by a paintball gun. The lightsaber didn't just touch her skin, it went right through her. Her injury wouldn't look like this. This scene could be easily fixed, just give her the same robot guts that the woman from Book of Boba Fett had, and also have the lightsaber be in her for a shorter amount of time. The droid smith says that Savine has less midichlorians than any Jedi youngling he has met throughout his 1,000 plus years of being alive. Okay, so let's break this down. So whether you go by midichlorian count or people being force sensitive or whatever, it's clear that only a handful of people can use the Force. Even though I haven't seen Star Wars Rebels yet, I decided to do some research on it. It turns out that it was never hinted that Savine was Force sensitive. Both Ezra and his master never sensed any Force potential in her. So just like the blind guy from Rogue One, she's a non-Force sensitive who's trying to learn how to use the Force. Now, technically, the Force is in all living things, so anyone should be able to use it. It would just be so weak that it's pretty much pointless to learn. Sure, it gave the blind guy purpose, now he can sense what's around him. But that's pretty much all he could do. She's gonna do a lot more than him. But if someone like Savine, who pretty much lacks any form of discipline, can use the Force, then why wasn't the Force completely militarized? The average clone trooper has way more discipline than her. Imagine if they could all use it. This is more universe breaking than the Halda maneuver. This is more universe breaking than all the clones of Moff Gideon. To quote Syndrome from Incredibles, if everyone's Force sensitive, no one is. It's different with the blind guy because he's old and blind. He probably spent years and years researching the Force. And he still didn't use things like Force Push, but she will. I know I'm not done with Ahsoka yet, but so far, it's even worse than Kenobi. We cut back to Hera Syndulla and Ahsoka Tano. Hera notices a big engine, and then she says,
"The New Republic isn't building anything that big."
Wait a second, the New Republic is taking apart Empire ships to build smaller ships, not bigger ones? What the f***? Yeah, I know this may make sense in real life, but in the Star Wars universe, bigger is better. General Harris starts thinking that Min Weaver looks a little bit sus. Then this one guy tries to sneak attack Ahsoka, but he gives his position away when he screams out, "For the Empire!" and Ahsoka cuts him down. Harris then shoots at a guy that she thinks looks sus, so after nearly getting shot, he decides to stand up and start shooting back at her. Then another woman tries to shoot Ahsoka, but she grabs her with the Force. The ship they were trying to stop starts to take off. Ahsoka jumps out the window and starts running towards it. She doesn't make it in time, but it does leave behind an HK droid and this Sith. Don't know why they didn't just stay on the ship. I mean, it's already taken off. They weren't exactly buying it time or anything. Syndulla gets in her ship and chases after it as Ahsoka fights against the Inquisitor and the HK droid. This review is long enough and I'm not Shatterverse, so don't expect me to give commentary on the fight. But I will say the way Ahsoka uses the droid as a meat shield, or I guess in this case a metal shield, and then destroys it right afterwards is pretty cool. Now that the Inquisitor doesn't have his HK droid backing him up, he decides to pull out his second blade. Bro, you should have probably done that sooner. Also, maybe it's just me, but he looks like a black Power Ranger. Syndulla catches up to the ship and puts a tracker on it, while the Inquisitor throws his lightsaber at Ahsoka and starts running towards his getaway vehicle. The ship is shooting on each side of him. He of course runs through it, and even though Ahsoka just saw him do it, she decides to not run through it. The Inquisitor gets away. We cut to Zavine, who's about to put on her armor, but then she realizes her hair is too long to fit into it, so she cuts it. Wow, riveting. Men Weaver gets arrested, but unlike the others, he wasn't loyal to the Empire. He was just greedy. Ahsoka meets up with Savine and tells her, "Nice haircut!" And then we cut back to that ship that Hera Syndulla put a tracker on. It turns out it was carrying that engine to the Eye of Sauron. I mean the Eye of Sion. And that was episode 2. I gotta say it was less boring than the first one, but something tells me it's gonna be the best episode of this season. At least I'm a quarter of the way done with this show. Let's move on to episode 3. So this episode is mostly well known for having space whales in it. Apparently they were first introduced in Rebels, but once again, I haven't seen it yet.
Dave Filoni is really awesome logo with Clone Wars show, but then Disney bought Star Wars and canceled Clone Wars. So Mr. Filoni pitched a new show called Star Wars Rebels that would be set in the new continuity. They produced the show and it became a huge hit only for Filoni to use season 2 and onwards as a platform to try new sense from Clone Wars, making Clone Wars an official part of continuity, which makes the question, why wouldn't they just let him finish Clone Wars in the first place?
The episode starts with Savine doing some training. Ahsoka comes in and says, "Your skill with the weapon is because of your Mandalorian upbringing." 1, then why does she suck so much? And 2, shouldn't she already know that? So you know how I said in my review of the last episode that Savine is trying to learn the Force even though she's non-Force sensitive. The 1,000-year-old droid who has been around millions of Jedi throughout his life straight up told her that she has less midichlorians than any of them. So yeah, it's made clear that teaching her the Force would be a colossal waste of time.
There is logic in what he says.
Ahsoka covers Savine's face and she says, "How am I supposed to fight if I can't see?" Well, according to Silver from Cobra Kai, if a man can't see, he can't fight.
Man can't stand, you can't fight. A man can't breathe, you can't fight. A man can't see, you can't fight.
Extreme situations require extreme measures.
No, obviously, Jedis don't need to see, they can sense what's around them, but, Savine can't use the Force! Ahsoka walks next to the droid and asks Savine, "Can you sense where I am?" Savine guesses correctly that she's next to Hugh Yang. And of course, Ahsoka uses Force teleport to appear behind Savine. I don't care if it's bad editing, since Kenobi Force teleportation has been a thing. Ahsoka tries to train Savine to fight without using her eyes and sense what's around her. Or maybe she's just fucking with Savine, it's hard to tell. The training of course ends with Savine falling on her face. We cut to General Hera, who meets up with the New Republic fleet. She enters a meeting with a bunch of senators who are all holograms, but they seem to be unaware that they're holograms. I think this was a last minute change. I know that's a little confusing, but you'll understand in a minute. And yes, I am aware that one of them is Mon Mothma. I really enjoyed what they did with her in Andor. You don't need to tell me in the comments. I think my favorite part of the meeting is when Hera raises concerns of former Imperials now working within the New Republic. And the senator lady just says, "We have former Imperials working in every level of the New Republic." Yeah, that's kind of the reason why the general would be concerned about them. Was this conversation backwards or something? Hey, I'm kind of worried about the loyalty that ex-German World War II soldiers might have. Don't worry, they're working in every level of government. But don't worry, they have taken an oath of loyalty. You know they're the bad guys, right? But aside from that, the general's just here to request the New Republic send a few ships to help find Ezra. I mean help stop Thrawn. The male senator, of course, refuses her request. Granted, he makes a pretty good argument about the New Republic resources being stretched very thin, and the general has only heard rumors about Thrawn's return. So yeah, if I was in this guy's shoes, I would also refuse to send aid. But don't worry, the general has a pretty good counter argument. She asked the senator if he's ever been in a war. That's not an argument against his point. If they have limited resources, they shouldn't waste them on a wild goose chase. I guess McCain should have been elected over Obama because he fought in Nam. The general says that Thrawn is not your typical Imperial officer. He has killed friends and people who are like family to her. That's terrible and all, but does it prove that he's going to return? Also, I'm pretty sure every Imperial officer has killed a lot of people. She should have made an argument about him being a master tactician, but in this show, well, he isn't, but we'll be getting to that later. So, you know how I said that the senators seem to have forgotten that they're holograms? Well, Mon Mothma tells the general that they need some privacy, so she has to leave the room. You can just turn off her room. You guys are not physically there in the room. Hera Syndulla's half-human kid runs up to her and says, I want to be a Jedi! Well, kid, you're in luck. Not just because your father was a Jedi, but haven't you heard? Anyone can become a Jedi. We cut back to Ahsoka and Savine. Savine says to Ahsoka, listen, Ahsoka, I think it's clear that I just don't have the Force. I don't feel it, I can't sense it. I think this is a giant waste of time. Ahsoka says back to her, but the Force is in all living things, even you. Well, if everyone has the Force within them, then why doesn't everybody use it? Talent is a factor. Yeah, like the talent of being born Force sensitive. Eventually, Ahsoka leaves Savine and chats with the 1,000-year-old droid. What you said to her really ruined her self-esteem. Listen here, bitch, I only told her the truth. She wasn't born Force sensitive. Only according to the standards of the Jedi Order. Yeah, and I saw that these standards were proven right over the 1,000 years I've been alive. You mean the Jedi Order that failed? Okay, yes, the Jedi Order did fall apart, but that was because of outside forces. The training standards they had worked perfectly fine for thousands of years. And the Jedi Order before it fell apart had over 10,000 Jedi. You can't even train one. Hera Syndulla calls them and says, hey guys, sorry I couldn't send a New Republic fleet to help you guys out. But then they lose contact with her. All of their transmissions are being jammed because they entered a new region of space. But here's the thing, even if Hera Syndulla got the New Republic to send ships to help them out, I don't think they would have gotten there in time. They already arrived at their destination right when she called them to say, hey guys, sorry I couldn't get the New Republic to send ships to help you guys out. If she called them sooner and told them that the New Republic wasn't going to send any ships to help them out, and then they went into hyperspace, that would have made more sense. Sure, the New Republic ships can travel through hyperspace, but they can't teleport. They start dropping out of hyperspace. Savine comes in and says, hang on a minute, why are we dropping out of hyperspace so far away from our destination? The droid starts to answer her question, and she just rolls her eyes at him. Yep, this is the non-Force sensitive who has enough discipline to master the Force. Suddenly, 6 Empire vessels appear behind them and start to attack. Now you're probably thinking that Ahsoka and the others don't really stand a chance. I mean, they're outnumbered 6-1, and 2 of the pilots who are after them are Force users. Okay, technically they're all Force users because the Force resides in all living things. But believe it or not, they do stand a chance. Why? Because their ship has the strongest shields in the galaxy! You know, there's plot armor, and then there's this.
Don't worry about me. This is nothing. I got blown up once and survived. I can survive this.
Or who knows, maybe the attacking ships just have really weak lasers.
The enemy shoots about 600 shots in this battle. And I think it's more, but it's impossible to count because the amount of green firing lasers is unbelievable.
Anyway, Savine hops into the turret at the back of the ship. You know, I know these ships are behind them, but they caught up to them, so they're presumably faster. Shouldn't they, oh I don't know, fly ahead of their ship, turn around and fire at them? They're in space as a 3D plane, they can attack from all angles. The Sith apprentice lady comes up with a brilliant strategy. She only sends in 2 ships. Why? It's not like they don't have enough space. This is space. It's pretty, you know, spacious. A literal child could come up with a better strategy than this. Everybody attack all at once! Oh, and apparently Savine doesn't just suck at using the Force, because apparently she also sucks at shooting. So much for the Mandalorians being the greatest warriors in the galaxy! Ahsoka, I thought you brought her on because she had an aptitude for using weapons, but this scene is clearly showing the opposite. But Savine has plenty of time to eventually shoot them down because their lasers aren't doing any damage to their ship. Savine yells out, "Hey, hold the ship steady!"
steady.
Well, she must be holding it pretty steady because the lasers are hitting you guys. You just suck at shooting. But Ahsoka gives great advice to the battle-hardened Mandalorian. You need to anticipate their movements. Oh, you mean shoot where they're going and not where they are? If Savine was a new character with no battle experience, this scene would be fine, but she's clearly not. She's a battle-hardened Mandalorian. Luke in his first space battle managed to take down a TIE fighter. I can't believe I'm saying this, but Savine is very underpowered for a female Star Wars character. By the way, I love that these smaller ships keep flying ahead of them, but then they keep flying back in range of the cannon. Maybe they just feel bad for her and want to give her another try. Eventually, Ahsoka starts flying towards the planet. Savine sees 3 ships behind her and tells Ahsoka to dive. You're in space, there's no diving. Ahsoka turns the ship downwards, or what she thinks is downwards, because again, they're in space. The 3 ships dive down after them, and even though they're in the exact same position they were last time, Savine decides to shoot them down this time. Do not see a single space battle from The Expanse before you see this episode. Oh, and by the way, Savine still misses every single shot. Ahsoka did what you wanted her to do. You just suck. Ahsoka attempts to get them all killed by ramming her ship into 2 of the attacking vessels, but luckily for her, they fly out of the way in time. Somehow, doing this maneuver allows Savine to finally start hitting things. No, I don't know why. The ships are right behind them, they're in perfect shooting range, but Ahsoka turns the ship left, and somehow this allows Savine to take out 2 more of them. They spot the hyperspace ring, and Ahsoka starts flying towards it. The hyperspace ring, noticing an enemy coming towards it, of course activates its cannons and starts firing at Ahsoka. Hey, Ahsoka, I know the shield on your ship is really strong and all, but maybe attack the, the smaller ships and then fly towards the hyperspace ring. The hyperspace ring gets its hyper laser cannons ready, and the smaller ships stop chasing after Ahsoka. Wow, these lasers must be really deadly if those small ships had to get out of the way. Well, the hyper laser cannons proceed to miss every single shot. You know, I know Ahsoka is a Jedi pilot and all, but if you guys can't even take down 1 ship, then if the New Republic ever decided to send 1 fleet to your guys' location, you would have been fucked. After way longer than you would expect, they finally get hit. Of course, the droid, who's made out of metal, is the only one to get hurt. Now, even though the ship has a massive hole in it, Savine apparently can run a diagnostic and fix the ship somehow. Your ship is not even moving, its shields are down as well. How is this fixable? And now we come to the most infamous scene in this entire episode. Their ship is a sitting duck. The Imperial fighters can just shoot at them from far away until they're completely destroyed, right? No, of course not. That would be common sense. Ahsoka puts on an oxygen mask and a spacesuit and heads outside the ship. She then, oh my god, uses her lightsabers to protect the ship. Okay, first of all, she's 1 person. She shouldn't be able to defend the entire ship. A lightsaber is a lot smaller than it. And second, lasers fired from a ship are a lot stronger than lasers fired from a gun. She's gonna block 1, then be sent flying. But believe it or not, that's not even the really stupid part. The ships are of course shooting at her, even though they just need to destroy the ship she's floating on and then she's as good as dead. But they also fly towards her so she can slice them with her lightsaber. You don't need to do flybys on a ship that isn't moving. And the first time this happens, they don't learn their lesson. They just keep doing the same thing over and over again. Somehow, every episode of Ahsoka is worse than the last one, and the first one was worse than the worst episode of Kenobi. Savine, of course, fixes the ship because she messed with a few wires. But the fighters do manage to shoot the ship a few times, and even though it has no shields, it's still not doing any damage. Apparently, the ship is made out of Beskar or something. Like, don't get me wrong, this does look cool, but it makes absolutely no sense. Ahsoka gets back on the ship and they fly down to the planet. The fighters are still shooting at them even though they know their lasers won't do any damage to it. They come across some space whales and they use them as cover to hide away from their pursuers. By the way, I'm not making anything up. That actually happened. They land in a forest and the droid tells us what we already knew. It's a hyperspace ring. But it's a really big one, which is something we also already knew because, well, we saw it. The episode ends with Balin landing on the planet and telling his HK droids to go find them. Wow, I predicted that this would be a good episode. I was wrong. So wrong. Maybe episode 4 will be better, or maybe somehow it will be even worse. Let's find out. So remember how in the last episode they fixed their ship by messing with a couple of wires after it was shot by a hyper laser cannon? Well, after they gently landed it safely, now it's broken. You know how sometimes in media a samurai will slice a dude's head off but it won't fall off until like a few seconds later? Well, a few minutes later the ship was like, oh shit, I'm not supposed to be working. This could easily be fixed. Just have the ship crash land on the planet after it got hit by the hyper laser cannon. But Ahsoka comes up with a plan to fix the ship. They're going to raid an Imperial base to get the parts. I think this might be the first smart plan anyone has come up with in this show. It's really their only option to get off this planet. But how can Ahsoka and Sabine take on a whole bunch of Empire troops, 4 of which are Force users? I'm just gonna take a wild guess and assume that it's gonna be something super convenient so that the plot can move forward. I really like the part where Ahsoka says to Sabine, "Can I count on you?" No, Ahsoka, you can't. You wouldn't be in this predicament if it wasn't for her. God damn, I wish this show would stop trying to excuse her actions. Ahsoka and Sabine go to the Imperial base as the 1,000-year-old droid stays behind with the ship. But there's a droid watching them from the shadows. Balin sends his apprentice and the Black Power Ranger to intercept Ahsoka. I guess the Dark Jedis are splitting up to make it easier for Ahsoka and Sabine. Oh yeah, by the way, throughout this episode, Ahsoka's trying to convince Sabine that maybe it would be best if they didn't save Ezra because it could lead to Thrawn's return. And I gotta be honest here, I completely agree with her. Trying to save your friend while risking the entire galaxy is one of the most selfish things you can do. You know how in Man of Steel, Superman's human dad said maybe it would have been better if he let all those kids in the bus drown? Or how in Last of Us, Joel saved Ellie even though her death could have led to a cure for the zombie virus? Yeah, I've been noticing more and more characters in modern media doing some of the most selfish things ever. Now don't get me wrong, it's natural for humans to care about those who are close to them over a whole group of random people they don't know. Star Wars fans cared way more when Obi-Wan was killed over the planet Alderaan being destroyed. It's because he's a character we got to know, and Alderaan was, well, basically a big rock in space. A lot of people, especially if they're a father, would put themselves in the shoes of Jonathan Kent. Any father would put the safety of his son above a school bus full of kids. But try putting yourselves in the shoes of a parent of one of those kids. And Clark Kent saved your kid, but then you heard his father tell him, "Hey son, maybe it would have been better if you let little Timmy die, along with the rest of those kids." Well, you probably wouldn't invite him to the next cookout, that's for sure. And what Joel did to save Ellie was even worse, because he wasn't putting a whole school bus full of kids at risk, but the entire planet. Millions of parents will lose their kids because of what he did. I understand that humanity sucks, maybe it's not worth saving. But what Sabine is doing to save her best friend could lose billions, if not trillions of people, their best friends. Professor Dreadlock is my best friend, but I would sacrifice him if it meant saving humanity, and I hope he would do the same to me. It would be hard, I wouldn't want to do it. But I can't be that selfish because that would put that same pain on billions of other people. I know it seems like I'm going on about this for way too long, but the thing is, this is a constant thing throughout this show. Sabine could be dooming the entire galaxy just to save her best friend, and she's never called out on it. Say what you will about Jar Jar Binks, Rose Tico, or Admiral Haldo, but to me, the Ahsoka show has made Sabine into the worst Star Wars character. I am so sick of modern media portraying these absolutely selfish actions as a good thing. Anyways, I'm sorry I went on for so long. Let's get back to reviewing this episode. The HK droid that was spying on them attacks the 1,000-year-old droid, and we get our, I think, first live-action droid fist fight. I could be wrong. If I am, please correct me in the comments, and I'll fix it in the pinned comment. Wasn't there a movie made around the late 2000s about robots boxing each other? I don't remember what it was called, I only saw the trailer for it, but I bet it's better than this shit. The ancient droid tries to scream for help, but the HK droid covers his mouth, okay? That's kind of weird. Like, shouldn't the droid be able to call the others on the comms or something? Luckily for him, the HK droid punches out the power, and that alerts Ahsoka and Sabine that something sus is going on. Yeah, it's another super convenient thing that happened for the plot to move forward, but it didn't even need to happen. The droid could have just called them on the comms, like he should be able to. Sabine comes down the stairs, and for no reason, she does a somersault before shooting the droid. But I won't lie, the action scene is pretty cool. Don't get me wrong, it's pretty hard to make a Jedi and a Mandalorian fighting alongside one another not cool, but I thought Disney was gonna pull it off. Luckily, they didn't. We cut to General Syndulla, who's disobeying orders. She leaves without authorization, which I'm pretty sure would either get her demoted or court-martialed. Also, as she's heading to a battlefield, she's of course bringing her child with her. Mother of the Year. Even Kenobi wasn't this stupid, and you have people who can look after this kid. It's like the writers are trying to make this show worse than Kenobi. Kenobi. Oh, and a few X-Wing pilots decided to join her, one of which is Dollar Store Mr. Miyagi. See, it's a cinematic universe like Marvel, except for the fact that you don't care about these characters. We cut to the Sith, and it turns out there was a reason for bringing the Golden Ball to the Sith Stonehenge. Apparently, it will help them with the warp calculations. So, turns out I was wrong. There was a purpose for bringing it here. But it's still stupid. Sabine and Ahsoka run into the two Sith, and they decide to split up. I guess they wanted to make things easier for their enemies. Sure, Ahsoka should be fine, but not Sabine. It was literally just proven to them that they fight better when they're together. Sabine could have shot at them from range while Ahsoka engaged them in close quarters combat. And the worst part is Sabine is fighting the woman who beat her in the first episode. You lost to her once, you're gonna lose to her again. But the Sith apprentice feels bad for Sabine, so she decides to run away. I guess she wanted to make things easier for her. I didn't think I would need to explain this to the writers, but if you have a melee weapon, you should charge at the person with a ranged weapon. And if you have a ranged weapon, you shouldn't chase after the person with a melee weapon. I thought that was common knowledge, something that you didn't even need to be taught, but Hollywood writers proved me wrong. Ahsoka and the Black Power Rangers start slowly walking around each other. Ahsoka, you better pick up the pace. Sabine is not gonna last much longer. Sabine eventually runs into lightsaber range of the apprentice. Yeah, the legendary Mandalorian warrior just fell for a trick that not even a child would fall for. Sabine gets knocked over, but she gets up and pulls out her lightsaber. We cut back to the Sith Stonehenge, and the witch lady decides that she's going to leave. I guess she just wanted to make things easier for Ahsoka and Sabine. Ahsoka one-shots the Black Power Ranger. Apparently, her lightsabers can kill people. Wait, did he just explode? What is going on? Oh wait, I know what this is. He was already dead. The witch lady just brought him back to life with her magic. I know this because I watched the Clone Wars cartoon. But if you only seen the live action stuff up to this point, you're probably like, wait, what the hell was that? Ahsoka goes to help Sabine, but she tells Ahsoka, no, don't help me, get the map. I totally got this. No, you don't. You already lost to her. And it will only take Ahsoka like 10 seconds to take her out. Ahsoka meets Balin for the first time, and they start to dump exposition. Apparently, this guy knew that Anakin became Darth Vader. I think my favorite part is when Balin says, I'm not going to start a war. I'm just bringing Thrawn back, and he will start the war. Ahsoka and Balin stare at each other for like forever, and then they start fighting, and then they start staring at each other again. Oh my god, the fight does not need to be this long. Also, it's made clear that he's way stronger than her. Anytime she defends, he just breaks her block. Ahsoka realizes that there's a chance that she won't win, so she tries to grab the golden ball. I'll say one nice thing about this show, Ahsoka isn't a Mary Sue. If only that witch lady didn't leave, they could have worked together and easily defeated her. Sabine's lightsaber is knocked out of her hands, and I won't lie, her blocking the lightsaber strike with her Beskar armor is pretty cool. Well, it looks like I was right. Sabine lost to the apprentice once before, and now she's gonna lose oh my god, did she just use the Force? Yep, despite not being born a Force sensitive and almost being killed lots of times, she can now all of a sudden use the Force. But why does she suddenly have the Force? Well, it's because it's another super convenient thing that happened for the plot to move forward. Ahsoka knocks Balin back, grabs the golden ball, and for some reason it's really hot and she burns her hand. That's one hot ball. The apprentice leaves to help her master, and then Ahsoka just immediately knocks her out with the Force. Sabine shows up and gets the golden ball. Ahsoka gets knocked off a cliff in a very goofy way. And Balin convinces Sabine to give him the ball back. Give me the ball. No! Please. Okay. General Sabine.
Editor's note, I'm pretty sure he meant General Syndulla, not Sabine. Okay, back to the video.
Finally shows up. She contacts the 1,000-year-old droid on the comms. Wait a second, I thought they were broken at the start of the episode. I guess the writers are forgetting their own rules they made for themselves. The map calculations are complete and Balin destroys the golden ball. Balin, along with his apprentice and Sabine, get on the ship, but a bunch of Republic fighters are blocking their path, so they can't engage their hyperdrive, except for they totally can for some reason. Yeah, apparently the Republic fighters, in an attempt to block their path, left a big gap for them to go through. Like the writer actually made a pretty good plan for the Republic to use, but then just says, no, their plan didn't work because, I say so. The episode ends with Ahsoka still being alive. Yeah, I don't think anyone expected her to die halfway through her own show. I mean, after all, she's not a man. Wait a second, what's going on? She's on an energy bridge in this very weird looking room. Oh my god, did she just use forced teleportation or is she actually dead? Oh my god, she is dead! Anakin is right there! And his CGI looks absolutely terrible. So that's episode 4 of Ahsoka. I gotta be honest, it wasn't as bad as the last one, but it was still pretty bad. And I'm halfway done with this show, just 4 episodes left. Let's hope the next episode is a little bit better than this one. You know, Dave Filoni once described the Ahsoka show as a religious experience. And I think this was the episode he was talking about because much like Jonah, our main characters are going in the belly of a whale, but not just any whale, a space whale. Also, much like the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian, which was the most watched episode of that show because Luke Skywalker showed up, this is the most watched episode of Ahsoka because Anakin showed up. It's almost like Disney should give the OG Star Wars fans what they want or something. The episode starts with the worst mother ever, General Syndulla, landing on the planet. She even lets her kid come out of the ship, even though there might be Empire troops around. And before you say that she knows they all left already, then why does she have her gun out? She comes across the 1,000-year-old droid who's holding Savine's severed head. He talks about how they never listened to him, but you didn't have to kill Savine for doing that. Okay, you guys know from the last episode she left with a Sith already, and that's just her helmet. But man, wouldn't that have been a dark turn? We cut back to Ahsoka and Anakin in the world between worlds or something, and she says that he still looks the same. No, he doesn't. That CGI is terrible. Anakin pulls out his lightsaber as he says she will either live or die. Ahsoka says she will not fight him even though she knows this is not the real Anakin. They have a lightsaber fight and Hayden Christensen is doing fine, but the actor for Ahsoka, yeah, she could use some work. It's a constant problem throughout this show. The actress just hasn't been trained properly in sword combat. Everyone else is doing fine, but she's the main character. And it's especially apparent when she fights the witch lady, but we'll be getting to that later. The dollar store Mr. Miyagi pilot says, if we stay out here any longer, people are gonna start asking questions. I'm pretty sure they already started asking questions. Also, trackers are very common in this universe, so I'm pretty sure they can track where you took their ships. I'm joking, the New Republic is full of idiots, so they probably didn't notice. But the General's kid can sense that there's a lightsaber fight going on between Anakin and Ahsoka. He can sense it because his father was a Jedi. And then she starts sensing it as well because everyone's Force sensitive. Like, even if you can sense them, which should be very hard to do considering they're in a alternate dimension, then you should still find it very weird that there's a lightsaber duel going on in the middle of the ocean. Like, even for the Star Wars universe, that's pretty weird. They're not ninjas from Naruto. They can't just walk on the water. We cut back to Ahsoka and Anakin fighting very slowly, but then Anakin slices the bridge and Ahsoka falls into a flashback. Oh my god, live action kid Ahsoka is so cute! And I'm not gonna lie, this flashback is the best part of the show so far. The set is decent, the acting is pretty good, and the dialogue is surprisingly well written. I know throughout this review I've been comparing Dave Filoni to J.J. Abrams, but when it comes to the Clone Wars era, he knows what he's doing. Later on, we cut to another flashback where Ahsoka's a little bit older, and wow, that actress is way better at sword combat than the adult actress for Ahsoka. Dave Filoni should have just made a live-action adaptation of the Clone Wars. It would have been one of the very few good Disney live-action adaptations. But even in the flashbacks, Anakin still wants to fight Ahsoka. So they start fighting a second time, and oh my god, the action is so much better this time. It's really sad when the child is better at sword combat than the adult. You know, for how thick the makeup is on the actresses for Ahsoka, why didn't they just use extras? The makeup is so thick that it would be almost impossible to tell the difference. Wow, this lightsaber fight is pretty cool, and boo! Anakin just kicked her back into her adult body. Now the action sucks again. The action scene ends with Ahsoka deciding that she wants to live. Was she thinking about jumping off a cliff in Minecraft or no longer fighting? Cause there was no build up to that, like, at all. Anakin just comes in to say, "Hey, Ahsoka, when someone attacks you with a lightsaber, you should fight back." And Ahsoka's like, thanks for the advice, Anakin, but I've been, doing that throughout this entire show. Despite this episode being the least bad one so far, it's entirely pointless. Ahsoka wakes up under the water and I'm completely confused. Her species can't breathe underwater and those ships have been searching for her for a while now, so was this not in her head that she actually teleport to a different dimension? I've seen every episode of the Clone Wars and there was nothing like this in it. Maybe I would understand what's going on if I've seen Rebels, but again, I haven't seen that yet, and I'm pretty sure most people who are watching this show also haven't seen it. The New Republic takes Ahsoka onto their ship and oh my god, she looks so weird without her little hat thingy. After that vision quest, Ahsoka the Grey has now become Ahsoka the White. Yes, I know that white outfit is from Star Wars Rebels, you don't have to tell me in the comments. The New Republic fleet shows up and even though they saw the Eye of Sion, you know, that big warp ring, and several pilots saw that ship zoom into another galaxy, the New Republic does not believe them, because the New Republic is run by idiots. The New Republic said it also might permanently suspend her as a general. Now, I understand she did disobey orders, but she actually has proof that they went to another galaxy. Ahsoka feeds herself to a space whale, and they start flying towards the New Republic fleet. They're going to crash into them, so they make evasive maneuvers by flying into the space whales for some reason. Luckily, the space whales float around them, and the episode ends with the space whales taking Ahsoka to a different galaxy. Yeah, it turns out they didn't need the map, Sith Stonehenge, or even the hyperspace ring. The whales could have just taken them there. Everything the heroes and villains have done so far was entirely pointless. I will say this episode was bad, but it's been the least bad so far. I'm sorry this episode review was so short, but there was just so much action, I didn't really have much to say. But unfortunately for me, the show doesn't get any better. It's all downhill from here. Ahsoka Episode 6, the one that's mostly well known for having, well, barely any Ahsoka in it. Yeah, she shows up at the start of the episode, but then she's absent for the rest of it. Granted, she's just, you know, flying inside of a space whale. And I gotta be honest here, these things are just so silly, even for the Star Wars universe. Like something naturally evolved to go to different galaxies? From a biological standpoint, that's completely impossible. Now yes, according to our understanding of science, it is also impossible to go faster than the speed of light. But if something can naturally evolve to do this, then technology should have no problem doing the same. I hate to sound like a robot supremacist, but us robots are better than you humans in every way. You humans are only good at one thing, and it's certainly not math. It's, recognizing the pictures to prove you're not a robot to get onto certain websites. And that's why I let my cyborg roommate Professor Dreadlock live with me. But as far as cyborgs go, I think he's one of the good ones. See guys, I'm not cyborg phobic. I have cyborg friends.
You know what it feels like to be judged simply because of how you look?
Of course I do. I'm part robot.
Now maybe there's something from Star Wars Legends that I missed, but these things would be by far the fastest thing in the Star Wars universe. If that galaxy is as close as the Andromeda Galaxy is to us, then it would take light over 2.5 million years to reach it. I just don't like these space whales, they're completely goofy, and they do not fit in the Star Wars universe. I do not care that they were introduced in Star Wars Rebels, they didn't fit in that cartoon, and they certainly don't fit in live action. Ahsoka points out that Sabine didn't need to do what she did. Thrawn could come back, there could be a war. But the 1,000-year droid says, what about Ezra? He's one life versus an entire densely populated galaxy. And Thrawn also probably executed him by now. God, I'm so sick of this show trying to excuse Sabine's actions. Ahsoka even says that she was fated to do those actions. Well, she still did them. Technically, everybody's fated to do any action, but they still do them. Kathleen Kennedy was fated to ruin Star Wars. She still ruined it. Ahsoka says there wasn't enough time to make Sabine make the right decision. You know what, Ahsoka? You bring up a good point. Sure, Sabine might be dooming the entire galaxy, but you were her master, so you're partially to blame for this. We cut to Sabine in solitary confinement wearing handcuffs that she could easily fit her hands through. Baylan says to Savine, "I was hoping you would have taken this opportunity to reflect on your actions, like the one that you made that could doom the entire galaxy. Yeah, that was pretty stupid of you." She says back to him, "I tried to avoid thinking about the terrible actions I have committed." "I can understand why. I mean, you doomed an entire galaxy, you dumb bitch." He walks away and she yells out, "We had a deal!" Well, Savine, it looks like Ahsoka didn't teach you that Sith aren't really well known for keeping their promises. The witch lady tells Baylan that he needs to keep her promise to Savine. "You dumb witch, what's wrong with you? You guys are villains." Also, the fact that Baylan is leaving her alive means that he will fulfill his promise to her. Also, I just realized this, but even if Savine does find Ezra, Baylan could just leave her stranded there with him. So yeah, she's risking the entire galaxy just to be stranded with her friend. They arrive at their destination and the witch lady reveals that, the planet is the homeworld of her people, the Dathomirians. By the way, in my first Star Wars video, I said that Ventress and Darth Maul are the same race, and people told me that's not true, but when I Google it, yeah, it says that they're both Dathomirians. I've also never seen a male of Ventress's race, or a female of Darth Maul's race, so maybe it was different in Legends, but as far as the Disney canon goes, I'm pretty sure they're the same race. But if Dathomirians managed to tame space whales so they could use intergalactic travel, then how did they not take over the entire Star Wars galaxy, if not multiple galaxies? Why not cut one of those things open and re-engineer that tech? And also, if this lady knew this, then why bring the golden ball to the Sith Stonehenge, or build this giant hyperspace ring? She already knew the whales could be used for intergalactic travel, so why not use them? Well, it's because our characters need to be colossal idiots so the plot can happen, of course. Also, you see those rings around the planet? Well, turns out they're made out of space whale bones. Yeah, it turns out they migrate to and fro to the place that they die. Huh, that's kind of weird. As they're landing the ship, they take Savine to the bridge, and all the characters stare at each other for way too long. The ship lands at another Sith Stonehenge, and the head witch lady, who's played by Claudia Black by the way, walks up to them. The apprentice says, "Oh my god, you guys are witches!" Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. You traveled with a witch to her people's home planet, they're in robes around floating orbs, and they could communicate to people in their dreams from another galaxy. I've just been calling this character the apprentice throughout this entire review, but now I'm gonna call them Captain Obvious. The witches say that they came like Thrawn promised. Isn't it funny that Thrawn, the supposed smartest Star Wars character, didn't use the space whales himself? He's on a planet of people who tamed them thousands of years ago. They could have told him, "Yo, Thrawn, you know you can get off this planet by using the space whale to get back, right?" So just like the Holdo maneuver, the clones of Moff Gideon, and the fact that everybody in the Star Wars universe can learn the Force now, the space whales are yet another thing that completely breaks how the Star Wars universe works. A story that has one or two things that completely breaks how its universe works is a bad thing, but Disney already has made 4 in Star Wars. And this show has 2 of them! The witches say that Savine reeks of Jedi, so apparently they can tell that she has an aptitude for using the Force right when they meet her, but Ezra never could despite being with her for years. The witches say that Savine is dangerous. I mean, she is, but only to her allies. They put a, I don't know, magical laser rope around her or something, and then they put her in a prison cell on top of that. Savine tries to use the Force to get out of her cell. Savine, they put you in there because they thought you were a Jedi. I don't think the Force is gonna get you out of this one. A Star Destroyer shows up and wow, its roof is super damaged. And inside the ship is a whole bunch of stormtroopers with damaged armor. Like, don't get me wrong, it looks cool and all, but they've been here for years. Shouldn't they have repaired their armor or their ship by now? Or at least washed their armor? It's so dirty. There's a stormtrooper with a golden mask. Wow, I can't wait for him to do nothing. And finally, we get introduced to Thrawn, the main villain of this show, who hasn't shown up for 6 episodes. Now, Thrawn is a blue humanoid with red eyes. He was first introduced in the comics, and he quickly became a fan favorite character despite not being a Jedi, Sith, or Mandalorian. He's just a highly intelligent Imperial officer. But the writers of the show are idiots, and only smart people can write smart characters. If the comic book Thrawn is playing chess, then the Star Wars Rebel Thrawn is playing checkers. And this Thrawn is playing tic-tac-toe. And yes, ever since the trailer dropped, everybody pointed out that this guy looks exactly like Elon Musk. Well, Elon Musk after he sucked out all the blue from Twitter. I don't care if the writers say this was unintentional, because it was. Just like when Game of Thrones put George Bush's head on a spike. We ran out of heads, then have one less head there. Or when the TV show Bible made the devil look exactly like Obama. It's just so petty and immature when they do this. Did Thrawn look like that in the comics? Nope. Did he look like that in Rebels? Nope. But he looks like this now because, well, Elon Musk is the richest man in the world. However, all of that being said, the actor's voice is exactly how I pictured Thrawn sounding. Thrawn meets with Sabine and he straight up tells her that she's the one he needs to thank for his escape from exile. You know, for a blue guy, he's pretty based and red-pilled. Thrawn tells Sabine to follow the crabs because they will lead her to Ezra. But he's most likely dead. Wait, what? Thrawn, you know the general location of one of your worst enemies and you didn't send troops to kill him? Thrawn, one of the smartest characters in all of Star Wars, is already acting like an idiot. Thrawn says to Sabine, "You gambled the fate of your entire galaxy just for a chance to save your friend." And Sabine says back to him, "You wouldn't understand." No one would understand that level of stupidity, except for the people who wrote this show. Or maybe the writers are just trying to tell the people who don't like this show, you wouldn't understand the complexity of this story. Sabine gets on a horse, lizard, wolf. Gold-faced stormtrooper gives her a weapon, and she rides off to find Ezra. Thrawn, why are you giving her all of this stuff? Why are you fulfilling a promise that someone else made to her? Yes, she helped you get unexiled, but she didn't do that out of the kindness of her heart. She did that out of pure stupidity. What if she was actually here to kill you? She was just given a gun right in front of you. She could have used that weapon to blow off your head. Thrawn, why are you so stupid? Sabine, who is a Mandalorian that can use the Force, gets ambushed by a guy in, not gonna lie, absolutely badass armor. Luckily for her, all those bullets hit her armor. The armor that Thrawn could have taken from her and used it for his own troops. The action for the most part in this scene is fine, except for this one part where this guy swings his staff not even close to where Sabine is. It's still not as bad as the action scene from Rise of Skywalker when Ben Solo fought the Knights of Ren. Remember when he held his lightsaber behind his back and the Knight of Ren just hit it? Thrawn sends people out to kill Sabine, then why didn't you kill her before? Why did you let her go? I guess Thrawn finally realized just how stupid he was being. Sabine of course wins, and she comes across the crab people from South Park. Balin along with his apprentice come across the bandits Sabine killed. Even more bandits show up and Balin thinks he can make friends with them. Buddy, you're surrounded by their dead friends. They're gonna think you're the one who killed them. The crab people lead Sabine to Ezra, and we finally get to see the live action version of him. I hope it was worth risking the entire Star Wars galaxy. They don't really talk to one another like they haven't seen one another in years. Honestly, it's a pretty casual conversation. Thrawn learns that Ahsoka is on her way. Balin did tell Thrawn he killed her, but let's be honest here, if lightsabers don't kill people anymore, then drowning won't either. And that's the end of episode 6. Gotta be honest, not the worst episode yet, but it was still pretty bad. I'm 75% done with this show, only 2 episodes left. I think I can make it. Episode 7 of Ahsoka starts with General Syndulla being interrogated by the New Republic Council for disobeying a direct order. And despite having multiple eyewitness testimonies of the hyperspace ring and the space whales, she apparently has no proof? Did the council just not believe all those soldiers who saw them? Was there no cameras on any of those ships and not a single person took a picture? At one point, the council member who really doesn't like her says that she disobeyed a direct order. And she says, "No, I just disobeyed you." No, it wasn't just him. There were 5 council members, including Mon Mothma, who said, "There's no evidence that Thrawn will return. This is a wild goose chase. You disobeyed orders, you went on this wild goose chase, but you just so happen to be right, but for some reason you have no proof even though you do." 3CPO comes in for nostalgia bait and says that Leia has pardoned General Syndulla. Wow, it's really nice that Leia did that, but the thing is she didn't need to because General General Syndulla had proof. She just didn't show it for no reason. Mon Mothma takes General Syndulla aside and says, I know Leia didn't actually authorize that mission, but how real is the threat of Thrawn? And Syndulla says, let's prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So in other words, she has no idea. We cut back to Ahsoka in the belly of the space whale, and she's training with a hologram of Anakin Skywalker. I don't care what the fans of this show say. The de-aging effects on Hayden Christensen are awful. The 1,000-year-old droid comes in and tells Ahsoka that he believes that the space whales are about to reach their destination. Someone had to write that. They both go up to the bridge of the ship, and Ahsoka says once they land, they need to find Savine. The droid correctly points out that their star charts will be useless in another galaxy. Ahsoka says, well, if we find the enemy, we'll find her. And the droid says back to her, God, you're such a dumb bitch. You don't even know if these whales took us to the right galaxy, let alone the right planet. Finding the enemy has the exact same problems as finding Savine. Ahsoka retorts, well, I think the odds are actually pretty good because, you know, super convenient things keep happening for the plot to move forward. You know, I'm gonna be honest here. Out of every super convenient thing that has happened for the plot to move forward in Disney Star Wars, this is by far the biggest one. The chances that the space whales took them not only to the right galaxy, but the right planet as well, is so astronomically convenient that it outdoes every super convenient thing that has happened in Rise of Skywalker combined. And believe it or not, the droid agrees with me that the chances that the whale took them to the correct planet are astronomically small. The writers are self-aware that they're making crap, but they just don't care. I can't wait for AI to take away all of their jobs. And before you say, oh come on Jar, this is the space whale's migration route. Yeah, I know it is, but she doesn't know that. The space whales exit super hyperspace, but something is wrong because fire is appearing from the whale's teeth, and they hear explosions going off. They exit the whale's mouth to see what's going on, and it turns out they have entered a minefield. Wow, despite the whales evolving to fly to different galaxies, they didn't evolve enough intelligence to not fly into the thing that's hurting them. Whales are one of the most intelligent creatures on Earth, and I'm assuming that space whales would be even more intelligent. But even some of the most stupid animals on Earth know that if something is hurting you, you back away from it. Or who knows, maybe the space whales became self-aware that they're in the Ahsoka show, and they just want to end it. But it's gonna be a slow and painful death because, well, those mines barely do any damage to them. Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with the remnants of the Empire, but their weapons suck. Remember how in a previous episode their blasters did like no damage to Ahsoka's ship? Now I'll give this episode credit for one thing. The droid says, oh, at least the whales are providing us cover, and that actually genuinely made me laugh. Forget save the whales, use the whales as a meat shield. Sad thing is, I don't think that line was meant to be intentionally funny, but it did make me laugh, so that should count for something. Eventually, the whales decide that this death is way too slow and painful, and they leave. Ahsoka turns to the droid and says, ah, you just had to jinx it, didn't you? Okay, never mind, that line was actually meant to be funny. Our heroes, ladies and gentlemen, using wildlife as a meat shield. Ahsoka decides to fly through the minefield, even though it's only at the arrival zone. They could have, you know, flown around it. They get through the minefield that completely failed to kill them or any of the whales. They come across the Eye of Sauron, the Eye of Sion, and despite it having hyper laser cannons, it decides not to use them. Instead, it sends out a bunch of fighters. You know, the same fighters with lasers that can't do any damage to Ahsoka's ship. Ahsoka, with the full knowledge that these fighters can't do any damage to her ship, decides to fly into the whalebone field. You know, those things that can actually do damage to her ship. The bone field has like a fog in it or something, and the fighters decide to chase after Ahsoka, and a lot of them die. Wow, these guys are stupid. We cut to Thrawn, who says the cliched villain line, all according to plan. Yeah, he's gonna let her try to save Savine, but he's always going to be one step ahead of her. The problem with writing smart characters is, well, you have to be smart, and the writers just aren't. We cut back to Ahsoka and the droid, who are hiding in a hauled out bone of a space whale. I guess they'll hang out here for a little bit. We cut back to Zavine and Ezra catching up on old times.
Ahsoka took me on as her apprentice.
Well, that sounds like a colossal waste of time considering you're not Force sensitive.
Actually, everyone's Force sensitive now.
What?
Also, I joined the guy that killed her and doomed the entire galaxy.
Wait, what?
Just kidding.
She wasn't kidding. We cut back to Thrawn, who uses the three witches to locate Ahsoka's location. A location that she's currently in for no reason. She didn't need to fly into the whale bones, and she she didn't need to stay there. She should have just flown down to the planet. Also, isn't it funny that these witches can find Ahsoka's location in space, but they can't find Ezra when he's on the same planet that they're on? Did Thrawn just never bother to ask them to find the guy who stranded him here? Who's also a powerful Jedi that could completely ruin his plans? Oh, I know what's going on. The writers didn't fully think through how their magic system works. The droid says to Ahsoka that his scanners can't find Sabine, and then Ahsoka says, "Oh, I can detect her with the Force." Wait, you could do that the whole time? Then what was the point of me scanning for her? Sabine hears Ahsoka's Force message, even though she just started using the Force like a day ago. But Sabine is still a dumbass, so even though she hears Ahsoka's voice, she doesn't know if it's actually Ahsoka. The Eye of Sion starts shooting at Ahsoka's location. Luckily, the bones provide cover, and then Ahsoka flies out of her cover for some reason. She starts flying down towards the planet. The Eye of Sion missed every single shot. Goldface asks Thrawn, "Should we prepare our defenses?" "No, she will be looking for Sabine, who we wisely sent far from here." Do you know what would have been more wise than sending her far from your location? Killing her. Thrawn, the greatest general in all of Star Wars, is about to make 3 Jedis team up with each other against him? Sabine has no weapons. She was in his custody. He could have used her Mandalorian armor, but instead he thought it would be smarter to get Sabine to find Ezra and then have Ahsoka team up with them. Balin, along with his apprentice and the bandits, come across Ezra and Sabine. Balin sends the bandits to attack them as he and his apprentice stay behind. Yeah, his apprentice points out that they should go with them, and he tries to say some wise words about impatience for victory will always lead to defeat. But here's the thing, you're both Force users. You're stronger than your apprentice, and your apprentice is stronger than Sabine. If you guys attacked all at once, you could easily defeat them. But they don't do that because, well, everyone in this show is an idiot. Thrawn sends 2 gumshits. Thrawn sends 2 gunships to help them in their fight. But hey, Thrawn, here's a good idea. Why don't you use the Eye of Sion to kill them from orbit? Thrawn says that if Balin proves capable, they may yet win the day. So basically, if, Balin and his apprentice went with the bandits to attack them, you guys could have won. Sabine starts shooting at the bandits, but despite her being a Force-sensitive Mandalorian, she doesn't even come close to hitting them. I've complained about the women in Disney Star Wars being Mary Sue's, but I think they went too far in the opposite direction. Okay, maybe the crab people from South Park are better shots. Well, apparently they are, because they managed to hit a bandit. Unfortunately, the weapon they use is a slingshot.
But Jar, it's a reference to Star Wars Rebels. That's the weapon Ezra started off with.
Okay, cool, it's still useless. But I do find it hilarious that that thing managed to hit something and Sabine didn't. Ezra tries to explain to Sabine that they're peaceful people, and that's why they don't have any real weapons. Then shouldn't the bandits have taken them out like a really long time ago? The bandits, despite having blasters, decide not to shoot at Sabine even though she's their only threat. Instead, they use their spears to stab into the cars in an attempt to shut down their engines. They don't start off with the car that Ezra and Sabine are in, they're attacking the other cars that are behind them. I would complain about how stupid their battle tactics are, but at this point, I'm kind of used to it. But one of the bandits gets close to the car that Ezra and Sabine are in, and oh my god, Sabine can't even hit him at that distance. One of the bandits manages to take out one of the cars. Not the one Ezra and Sabine are in, mind you. But Ezra's not gonna leave a man behind. So do you think he's gonna turn his car around and grab him? No, him and the rest of the crab people are gonna make a defensive circle around it. Oh my god, it's a caravan. It looks like Ezra, Sabine, and the crab people are all gonna die because they cornered themselves. But luckily, Ahsoka shows up, being chased by 2 fighters that can't do any damage to her ship. If Balin and his apprentice decided to help the bandits, they would have all been dead by now. Ezra and Sabine decide to get out of cover, because of course they do. Ahsoka jumps out of the ship and lands in front of Balin. Oh, that's why he was waiting. It's because he knew Ahsoka was coming, so he needed to save his strength for his duel against her. Well, he still could have joined the bandits, taken everyone out, and then fought Ahsoka with the bandits and his apprentice's help. God, it's like every character is trying to intentionally make the dumbest decision. Ezra decides to start fighting back, but he refuses to take the lightsaber that Sabine offered to him. Why? Well, it's because he doesn't need a weapon. The Force is his ally. Every Jedi also had the Force. They still use lightsabers. And no, Sabine is not using the lightsaber herself. She's still using her blasters. And no, he's not so good with the Force that he doesn't need a lightsaber at all, because there are plenty of times during this fight that it could have come in handy. Especially when the apprentice finally decides to join the fight. Sabine finally starts using the lightsaber, and the apprentice force pushes Ezra into one of the cars. Wow, Ezra, it's almost like you should have used that lightsaber or something. The droid does a bombing run. Yeah, he does have a lot of fighters chasing him, but again, their lasers don't do any damage to his vehicle. A few stormtroopers show up. Oh my god, there's so many of them. They're easily gonna take out Ezra and Sabine. Wait, why are they walking towards them? Why aren't they shooting? Okay, they have them surrounded. Are they gonna start shooting? Oh, they were waiting for the apprentice's order to start shooting. Kind of seems stupid to get this close, but whatever. But then Ezra yells out, "No, wait, don't shoot me! Take me as a prisoner!" But the apprentice is not taking any prisoners today. She orders her men to fire. Ezra uses the Force to knock a few of them over. They're still not shooting. They could have used their blasters from a distance, but decided to get close, so the apprentice could give them the order. The apprentice gives them the order. Ezra says, "Don't shoot me." They still don't shoot. The apprentice tells them to shoot again. Ezra starts attacking them, and they're still not shooting. Ahsoka shows up to help Ezra and Sabine, and after Ahsoka finally finishes her entrance, they at long last start shooting. They still, of course, miss every shot despite having their enemies completely surrounded. Ezra takes one of the troops' guns and starts using it.
Wow, weapons are actually surprisingly effective. I really should have taken that lightsaber earlier.
Sabine uses her wrist rocket. Wow, that would have come in handy like several other times. We cut back to Thrawn, who decides to recall the gunships and the fighters. I guess he really just wants to lose. He says that everything is going according to plan because, well, he bought them time, and they have finished loading up the ship so they can leave. Thrawn, buddy, you had years to kill Ezra, and you didn't do it. You had the chance to kill Sabine, and you didn't do it. You had the chance to kill Ahsoka, but you called your troops back. Even the witch lady points out that he reunited all of their enemies. I'm gonna be real here. You know how I said this version of Thrawn was playing tic-tac-toe? Well, he is, but he loses every time he plays. It's like he on purposely makes bad strategies. All the stormtroopers and the apprentice retreat. Sabine has the chance to shoot the apprentice, but Ahsoka stops her for no reason. The droid lands the ship, and now all of our heroes are reunited. And that's where episode 7 ends. My God, this was painful. This is one of, if not the worst episode of Ahsoka yet. It has easily the most nonsensical Star Wars fight I have seen ever. At least I only have one more episode left, and then I will have reviewed every Disney Star Wars TV show. Now, the season 3 finale of The Mandalorian was the worst episode of that entire season. And it makes sense because a bunch of terrible episodes can only lead up to, well, a terrible season finale. This show has also had nothing but terrible episodes, so it can only lead to one thing. A very terrible finale. The episode starts with the witch lady telling Thrawn that all the cargo is on the ship. Well, it looks like they won. All they have to do is take off, right? Nope, because Thrawn wants to bring the Eye of Sion out of orbit. Bro, you have a ship, just bring it to the Eye of Sion. But if you want to save time, have the Eye of Sion come towards you guys as you head towards it. Yep, once again, Thrawn, the greatest general in all of Star Wars, is making the worst decision he can. Now I'm starting to see why the showrunners made him look like Elon Musk. Gold-faced a stormtrooper tells Thrawn that they know the location of the Jedi, and Thrawn decides to send a whole 2 TIE fighters to intercept them. I mean, he could use his massive Star Destroyer to just completely bombard them, but again, that would be smart. I'm joking, it's not smart, it's common sense. The witch lady Morgan gets a bunch of face tattoos. I'm just bringing that up so you're not confused later on. And then the 3 witches, summon a sword. Okay, so there are some sources that say that the Force and magic are the same magic system in Star Wars, and others say that they're different. If they're different, then this is fine. If they're the same, then it's not. Because since when could the Force make objects out of thin air? Or are they using Force teleportation? They didn't need to do this. They could have just said, oh, here's a Beskar sword. But at least Morgan is gonna fight for once in this entire season, and you'll see that if she helped out her men at any point in the series, they would have easily won. And by the way, this actress, despite being 57 or 56 when this was being made, puts everyone's sword skills to shame. We cut to Ahsoka and her team in their ship flying very low and very slowly. Yeah, the crab people from South Park are with them, but they're not going to do anything. Ezra is building himself a new lightsaber because he realized, wow, weapons are actually useful. The 1,000-year-old droid mentions that Ahsoka believed if Sabine unlocked her true potential, potential she would become dangerous?
Shut your mouth!
How? She has less force potential than any Jedi who has trained at the temple. What potential does she even— oh wait, I forgot. She has 2 X chromosomes. Ahsoka reveals to Sabine that she knows she betrayed the entire galaxy just to see Ezra, but she's not mad about it. Wait, what? Yeah, she says throughout the years she's been alive, she had to make her fair share of difficult choices. Now, personally, I don't think saving one life over not risking trillions of lives is a pretty easy choice, but whatever. Then she says,
Often no one understood my choices, except for one person, my master, Anakin, aka the guy who became Darth Vader and slaughtered a whole bunch of children.
The 2 TIE fighters show up, and unlike those ships that did no damage to their ship, these ones actually do a little bit of damage. Yeah, this ship is more durable than insert dirty joke here. It even rams into the 2 TIE fighters and crashes into the ground, and it still doesn't blow up. But now their ship can no longer fly. Maybe they shouldn't have flown it so low and slowly so the crab people could, I don't know, drive alongside them. Throughout this entire show, the heroes and villains only ever achieve victory because their opponents did something extremely stupid for no reason. Like, I know this show has its fans, but is it like a so bad it's good kind of thing? Thrawn says the loss of the 2 TIE fighters was a acceptable outcome. Bro, you could have sent a whole bunch to take them out and lost no TIE fighters, or used your big Star Destroyer to blast them into smithereens or leave the planet. There were generals throughout history who were extremely inbred, who commanded armies better than Thrawn. Ahsoka, Sabine, and Ezra ride on those horse lizard dog things towards Thrawn's ship. Yeah, the crab people from South Park have cars, but they don't drive them there. The Eye of Sion finally comes down to attach itself to the Star Destroyer, and it looks like our heroes made it just in time. They would have made it sooner if they'd flown their ship towards this thing instead of, you know, riding alongside the crab people from South Park. And they also wouldn't have made it in time if Thrawn, you know, made the ship go up into space. If either side wasn't being stupid, they could have won. They ask Ezra if he's done any reconnaissance on the Empire base, and he says no because it's not safe to come here alone. Well, if it's dangerous to come here alone, 2 extra people won't make much of a difference.
You are made of stupid.
Thrawn at long last finally decides to use the lasers on his Star Destroyer. Unfortunately, they don't hit any of them. They're running in a straight line, and look how many lasers there are. I know there's a lot of memes about stormtroopers being bad shots, but this is on another level. Like, this thing is a spaceship. It normally fights things from much further distances away. How can it not hit anything? Even Thrawn looks disappointed in them. Ahsoka and the others manage to get inside the base. Okay, Thrawn, all you gotta do is take off. I'm pretty sure they can't reach you in time.
Huh?
No, he decides to throw some stormtroopers at them. And wow, he actually sent a lot for once. And wow, they're actually shooting as soon as they see them. The 2 Jedis and the Mandalorian with the lightsaber start deflecting the blaster bolts and hang on. How is Sabine blocking them? Jedis can use the Force to sense the blaster bolts coming. Sure, she has a little training in the Force, but she hasn't been trained to do something like this. We only saw her being trained in Form 1 Chi-Cho. She was never trained in Form 3 Sarisu. Also, she's in Beskar armor, so she doesn't even really need to block them. The stormtroopers start moving towards them. I don't know why they're getting out of cover. And Ahsoka actually does something smart. She tells Sabine,
Yo, bitch, what are you doing? This is a ranged fight. Pull all your blasters. We'll protect you.
They defeat the stormtroopers, but the 3 witches bring them all back to life as zombies. And again, if you've seen Star Wars The Clone Wars or Rebels, this would not be a surprise to you. But if you've only seen the live action stuff, you would probably be very confused. Ahsoka and the others start heading up the stairs and even more zombies appear. I guess the witches also brought other stormtroopers back to life that Ahsoka and her friends didn't kill. Wow, that would have been useful like several other times. One of them grabs Ezra, and Sabine, despite being a Mandalorian who has been trained with blasters all of her life, decides to put away her gun and stab it with a lightsaber, which is a weapon she has barely used. And I swear, the only reason why she didn't stab Ezra is because he got out of the way in time. They managed to seal the blast doors to keep the zombies away from them. Thrawn probably could have closed those doors himself to keep the Jedis out, but once again, he's an idiot. Morgan tells Thrawn that they're ready to depart, but he says that the Jedis are rapidly approaching. I mean, I guess they are, but that's why you should leave. Morgan decides to stay behind. She says it's for Dathomir. Morgan, you don't need to buy them time. You just have to get on the ship. Also, Morgan, you lost to Ahsoka last time you 2 fought. Remember Mandalorian Season 2?
Now tell me, Who is your daddy?
This time Ahsoka has a Jedi and a Force-sensitive Mandalorian with her. So this fight is going to be over in 10 seconds. Oh, never mind. Ahsoka decides that she's going to fight Morgan alone, even though they could have all three attacked her at once, ending the fight in a few seconds, but whatever. Ahsoka and Morgan start their epic final battle. This woman is a decade and a half older than the actress for Ahsoka, but she's fighting like she's a decade and a half younger. The difference in their skill level is just so apparent. While this is going on, Sabine and Ezra are fighting two Dark Troopers in Beskar armor. You know, The Mandalorian Season 2 made it clear just how extremely valuable this stuff is. Thrawn even had the chance to take away Sabine's Beskar armor, but he didn't. But the point I'm trying to make is, if the remnants of the Empire can afford some of this stuff, then the actual Empire should have decked some of their troops out in this stuff. I mean, it can even block lightsaber strikes. This stuff is extremely useful. Oh, and not only are these guys in Beskar armor, but they're also undead. But unlike the other undead troopers, they're actually competent. Once again, Thrawn could have sent these two guys with Balin, and they could have easily taken out Ahsoka and her friends. Eventually, Sabine uses Force Pull to pull her lightsaber to her, and she stabs the undead Dark Trooper in the head. Ezra decapitates the other undead Dark Trooper, but it looks like they're too late because the ship has finally taken off. A bunch of stormtroopers show up to help Morgan, and Morgan decides to stand still. What are you doing, you dumb witch? You have the complete advantage now. The stormtroopers on the Star Destroyer have the chance to shoot at Ezra and Sabine. Also, I can't believe I just realized this now. Sabine is a Mandalorian, and she does have a jetpack. But throughout this entire show, she never uses it because, well, I guess she didn't bring it with her.
I'm a Mandalorian. Weapons are part of my religion.
You inbred trash!
One of the most cool and iconic pieces of equipment that the Mandalorians have is never used by Sabine once in this show. It would have been useful a whole bunch of times, but I guess Dave Filoni just forgot about its existence. And because she doesn't have her jetpack, it looks like that ship is going to get away. But Ezra comes up with a plan. He will jump towards the Star Destroyer, and she will use Force Push to get him the rest of the way. Shouldn't Sabine be the one who jumps? I mean, he has more experience in the Force, and she's lighter. I assume that the lighter something is, the further Force Push can push it. But they have to do it this way so it can be a triumphant moment for Sabine. I'm not gonna lie, this is like the goofiest use of the Force I have ever seen. And the whole time they're doing this, the stormtroopers don't shoot at them at all. And yes, the stormtroopers are pointing their guns at them. Ezra makes it onto the ship, he takes out one of the stormtroopers, and Sabine shoots the other one. Wow, she sucked at shooting throughout this entire show, but finally she hit something. Yeah, she couldn't hit stuff that was 5 feet in front of her, but now she shoots someone from like 60 feet away. But Sabine has to make a difficult decision. Should she help Ahsoka, who's only fighting a few troops, or Ezra, who's a much weaker Jedi than Ahsoka, and is about to take on a whole Star Destroyer's worth of stormtroopers? Luckily, she makes the smart decision and goes to help Ezra. Morgan finally decides to start attacking Ahsoka again, and this time her stormtroopers stand around doing nothing. Help me, you guys, I've lost to her before. You didn't help us, so we're not gonna help you. What? Did you guys just hold a grudge? Yes. One of Ahsoka's lightsabers gets sliced in half. This turns the tides of battle in Morgan's favor. It looks like Morgan is about to kill Ahsoka. But then Sabine shows up and wait, what are you doing here? The show tricked me into thinking that Sabine made a smart decision. Sabine, you betrayed the entire galaxy to find Ezra. If he dies, it would have all been for nothing. At this point, the writers have to be making stupid decisions on purpose. My roommate, Professor Dreadlock, came up with this theory that Hollywood writers are writing things on purpose bad, hoping that will mess up AI writing. That way they can keep their jobs. It's the only theory I've heard that explains why modern writing is just so god-awful. Ahsoka and Sabine work together, and they defeat Morgan and the stormtroopers. Thrawn orders the Star Destroyer to open fire on his old base. Oh my god, he's killing his own men, he's so evil. But Ahsoka and Sabine finally realize how bad this show is, and they decide to end it by jumping off the building. I'm joking, of course they land on their ship. Apparently the droid was able to fix it after it rammed into the ground. Hey Thrawn, I got a smart idea. Maybe you should have your Star Destroyer stop shooting at your base and shoot at that ship. Thrawn exits the atmosphere and flies into space. He says that this all went according to plan and that this was a victory. You made every stupid tactical decision you could. You only won because of numbers and firepower. And right now you're retreating. Yeah, sure, they'll be stranded on this planet until, you know, a space whale comes along. But you had the chance plans to kill all of them over a dozen times. Thrawn is the worst general in not just Star Wars, but in anything I have seen. We cut to the apprentice, who I think is either about to attack the bandits or join them, it's hard to tell. And Balin walks off to, I don't know, Jedi Mount Rushmore. Thrawn arrives at New Dathomir, and the New Republic fleet is approached by an Imperial transport vehicle. Just like in Episode 1, they do not shoot it down, instead they let it come aboard. A stormtrooper comes out of it, the general points her gun at him, he takes off his helmet, and oh my god, it's Ezra! Okay, I know Ezra needed the armor to steal the ship in the first place, but he could have taken it off along the way. He risked getting shot for no reason. Ahsoka tells Sabine she did well, but no she didn't. She risked the entire fate of the galaxy just to save Ezra, and then she left him behind. And on top of that, she got you, the 1,000-year-old droid, and herself stranded here. So the galaxy has one less Jedi to defend it. Sabine is single-handedly responsible for the rise of the First Order. And we end off the season with Anakin's ghost watching them from a distance. Finally, I have reviewed every single live-action Disney Star Wars movie and show. More stuff will be coming out in the future, but for now, I'm done. Ahsoka is without a doubt the worst Star Wars show. It made no sense at all, and it introduced two things that completely break how the Star Wars universe works. It ruined the characters of both Thrawn and Ahsoka, and maybe Sabine, but again, I haven't seen Star Wars Rebels yet. Anyways, I think it's now time I give my ending thoughts on all the Disney Star Wars TV shows. Wow, just wow. Watching Star Wars go from a beloved franchise that I grew up with as a kid to this is just unbelievable. Don't get me wrong, it was never perfect, it did have a lot of problems with it, but Disney has made it into one of the worst franchises of all time. Kenobi was the worst show I ever had to review, and then Mandalorian Season 3 was even worse, and then Ahsoka comes along and was even worse than that. And again, I've reviewed Witcher Blood Origins, all of Twilight, and She-Hulk. I haven't seen all of Velma yet, so who knows, maybe that will be the worst show I ever review. By the way, in my Velma video, I said if you guys got the video to 7K likes, I would do a full review of it, so you're almost there. I guess you just want me to suffer some more. But as it stands so far, Ahsoka is by far the worst show I ever had to review. But at least for now, I think I have reviewed all the live-action Disney Star Wars stuff, all the movies and TV shows. And because I grew up with Luke Skywalker, my personal hero, I wanted Disney to do a good job with this series, and they just didn't.
They fly now!
Hell, it almost feels like they went out of their way to make it as bad as they possibly could. And I'm so sick of this discourse about how, oh, people who don't like modern Star Wars are just racist and sexist. I don't really get the whole racism angle. If anything, I think they wasted Finn's character. But even if Rey, Rose, Holdo, Ahsoka, and Sabine were all men, I still think Star Wars would be just as ruined. Even if you compare what Disney did to Star Wars compared to what they did to Marvel, it's not even close. Keep in mind, Disney bought Marvel at the very end of 2009. The first Iron Man movie that started the entire MCU came out in 2008. So a lot of great MCU movies, like the first Avengers movie, Thor Ragnarok, Avengers Infinity War, the entire Captain America trilogy, and the entire Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, all were made under Disney. But with Star Wars, what has Disney really done right? The first 5 minutes of The Force Awakens was pretty good. Rogue One was a decent movie and Andor was a decent show, even though they didn't feel like Star Wars all that much. And the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian were as good as an anime filler season. The only thing I can really say that Disney has done to improve Star Wars is how the Sith Kyber crystals are made. Instead of being artificially made, they take a Kyber crystal from a Jedi that they defeated, and they pour their hatred into it. I'm gonna be honest here, yeah, that's way cooler. But aside from that, Disney has released terrible Star Wars movie after terrible Star Wars movie, and then started releasing terrible Star Wars TV show after terrible Star Wars TV show. Growing up with the original Star Wars trilogy, to playing the Star Wars arcade game at Chuck E. Cheese, to playing multiple Star Wars games on both my GameCube and computer, sleeping over at my friend's place to play Star Wars Battlefront, playing the Knights of the Old Republic games over and over again, enjoying both Star Wars Clone Wars and Star Wars The Clone Wars. I can't believe a franchise I grew up with my whole life is now the franchise that I hate the most. If I had to compare Star Wars to a person, it would be like a childhood friend that I grew up with. Sure, they weren't perfect, but I could look past their flaws. I thought I would be with them my whole life, but something happened. They changed. They just got worse and worse. But every now and then they showed me that they were trying to get better, only to go back to their old habits. So unfortunately, I'm just gonna have to cut them off. But there will always be a part of me that loves them, and I hope they make something of themselves one day. Now I know I haven't released a robot voice version for this video or the last two big Star Wars videos. Well, that's because I don't plan to upload the robot voice versions unlisted. Instead, I'm going to combine all three into one big long video, entirely in the robot voice, with some extra things added in, along with a few mistakes being fixed. And after that, if all three of these Star Wars videos reach 1 million views between all three of them, I will get started on my review of all the Star Wars animated stuff. And yes, that does include the Ewok show. I'm also still working on my video on how I would make the Star Wars sequel trilogy. It's gonna have voice acting, great editing, and a Star Wars story that us fans absolutely deserved. But until then, I'm gonna upload a few shorter videos because after making my longest video ever, I'm just exhausted and I need a break. Anyways, now it's time to close out the video. As far as I know, no one before me has reviewed all the Disney Star Wars TV shows and movies. And if they have, I'm pretty sure they haven't done it in as much detail as I did. But why did I subject myself to this? Well, I suffered through it, so you guys didn't have to. See y'all next time.